Oh, everyone, welcome back. Tonight we'll be doing a compilation video again of my scary stories videos. The first scary stories videos. But before we get into it, I just want to say that all the videos in this were when my channel pretty much just started, and so it's all going to be text to speech. Unfortunately, for those that find that off-putting, and also, I know I've been doing a lot of these compilation videos, but I've just been very busy, and hopefully soon I can get back to making new stuff. But that being said, sit back, relax, enjoy the video.
Letters. Things have been far from easy recently. Spent so much money on a degree that lead me to a dead-end minimum wage job and a plethora of student debt. Now living in a rundown apartment with a landlord that everyone despises. My mother never raised a quitter, however, so I persist, hoping it gets better. She was the only one who believed I can make it, that it'll all get better, and she hasn't steered me wrong yet. The days start like any other, begrudgingly rolling out of bed, change into my McDonald's work uniform, and ate a refreshing bowl of plain Cheerios, truly the morning routine of champions, before heading off to work. There's not much to write about concerning my work day, just flip some patties, took some orders, and dealt with annoying customers. I did see a rude customer trip and spill her drink in the parking lot. That made me smile a little. After a rather uneventful and exhausting day, I went back to my apartment. Upon walking in, I saw a container of cinnamon rolls with a small piece of paper saying, "From Mom," with a heart drawing. She did have a copy of my apartment key, so she must have dropped them off while I was gone. I was exhausted and starving, so I took a bite, feeling the warmth of home and my mother's love. I felt like a little boy again, enjoying a sweet treat and feeling her motherly embrace. And I'm not ashamed to admit I cried right then and there. I finished the rolls and cleaned the container. I was going to go visit her later this week anyway. I'll return it then. I looked back at the little note from my mom when I saw a letter next to it. Weird, I must have not seen it there earlier. I picked it up and examined it. I didn't see any kind of writing on the letter. No from Mom, no to Bryce, or anything like that. Not even the signature heart Mom always draws on every letter she writes. Maybe I'm thinking too far into it. Perhaps she was in a rush. I decided to open it, wondering what cheesy inspirational quote she wrote for me this time. But there wasn't any kind of note in the letter, just a picture. A very odd picture. It looked like a dark basement, only lit by an old, dangling overhead light. In the center of the picture was a wooden door. The image was a little off-putting and kind of weird for my mom to send me, especially since her basement doesn't look like that. I was way too tired to think about it though, so I just went collapse on the bed and hopefully sleep for an eternity. The next morning, I woke up and rolled out of bed, going about my usual routine until I saw another unopened letter on my kitchen table. I left the one from yesterday unopened and on the counter next to the microwave, but that one was gone now. I looked around, but I couldn't find it. I glanced back at the table, eyeing the new letter with curiosity and an underlying tone of dread. I hesitantly walked over to the table and picked up the letter and turned it over. "Be calm. God awaits you at the door," was written on the front of the letter in neat writing. Was this a threat? Did someone break into my house and leave this here? I called work and gave him the basic gist that I suspected someone broke in and I won't be in. I didn't feel it necessary to mention the letter. My manager, bless her heart, was very understanding and gave me the day off. I immediately called the cops and started looking around, trying to find any sign of a break-in or if someone was still here. But my mind was filled with curiosity over what was in the letter. After confirming that I was safe, for now, my eyes wandered over to the table. I knew it probably wasn't a good idea, but I opened it. In hindsight, that was pretty foolish, but I couldn't help myself. There was another picture, this time of the door in the dark basement wide open, revealing nothing but darkness. I sat there staring at the letter, trying to make sense of it until the police arrived. I gave my statement as they investigated the house. I hoped that they could find something, anything to figure out who might have broke in. A million questions ran through my mind as they searched. Who could have done it? Why me specifically? Did I offend someone in some way? An officer came up to me and said that either the perp managed to perfectly hide any and all evidence of a break-in, or no one broke in at all. The way he said it almost sounded like he was annoyed at me for wasting his time. They left and I collapsed on my couch, trying to figure out this whole messed up situation. The best course of action, I thought, was to call Mom. I didn't know what I expected her to do about this, but I just thought hearing her voice would help me calm down a little. With shaky hands, I pick up my phone and scroll down to her contact information. It didn't take long. I didn't have many contacts to begin with. I put the phone to my ear as I waited for her to pick up. The phone kept ringing until it was put on voicemail. That wasn't too surprising. Mom almost always had her phone on silent because it distracted her from Vampire Diaries or some other crappy drama series. I was going to try again until I got a text from her number. Odd. She was never one to text, just calls and letters. I opened the Messages app and read my mom's text. And anyone whose name was not written in the Book of Life was thrown into the lake of fire. Before I could even process what this meant, my eyes widened in horror, and a strangled sound escaped my throat as I received a follow-up message. It was an image of my mom, tied to a table covered in cuts and bruises, a massive fireplace burning bright behind her. My face went pale and my breathing quickened. I had to do something. I needed to call the cops. I heard a knock at the door and I jumped. I rushed to the door, hoping that it would be my mom. Please, God, let it be her. I quickly pulled open the door and saw nothing. I looked left and right down the halls, but there was no one. All that was there was another letter on the floor. I hesitantly picked it up and quickly went back inside the couch. I opened it right away, pulling out a handwritten letter followed by a photo. The photo was of the dark basement again, but this time from the floor in a corner instead of the steps like the previous basement photos. I was shocked to see that it was me in the photo. I was on the top of the steps heading down, clearly oblivious to whoever took the photo. But that didn't make any sense, since the only basement I've ever been down was the one in the apartment for laundry just a few days ago. That's when it hit me like a freight train. The person who kidnapped my mom was here and had been here for a while now. I didn't even give myself a second to think before I ran out of my room, taking my old baseball bat with me and running down to the basement. I got a few weird looks on the way over, but it didn't matter. My mom was in trouble, and I had to help her. I shoved the door open, staring down into the dark abyss. I flicked the light, but nothing happened. Maybe he knew I'd arrive and cut the power to the basement. I turned on my phone flashlight and carefully made my descent down. Bat firmly grasped my hand as I called for my mom. I got to the bottom step and looked around with the flashlight. Everything looked normal, just like in the pictures. A few laundry machines, some old pipes, and the door. I always assumed it was an old storage closet for the janitors, but now I know it was something far more sinister. I ran up to the door and kicked it open. "Mom, are you in here?" I called out in the dark room, shining my light into it. It was much bigger than I had assumed it to be, far too big to just be a janitorial closet. I walked in slowly, the floorboards giving a small creak with each step. I saw the now extinguished fireplace from the text message. It looked a lot bigger than the photo showed, like you could fit a whole person in there. When I approached it, I could see that whoever was responsible for this did just that. There were ash-covered bones riddling the inside of the fireplace. So many arms and legs, rib bones, and even more harrowing was the several human skulls all placed neatly in a row. I shuddered to imagine one of those being my mother. I shook the thought from my head. She had to be okay. She needed to be. I stood up and walked further into this long room. Another aspect that sort of creeped me out was how neat everything was. Everything was in perfect order, and there wasn't a single cobweb in sight. I saw the table that my mother was strapped to, but she wasn't there. Damn it, damn it. I muttered to myself as I approached the table, trying to see if I could find some kind of clue or something to help me figure out what happened or where she could have gone. But nothing, not even a single drop of blood anywhere. I stepped back from the table, breathing heavily as I tried to think about what to do now, until I heard a low, wet gurgling rattle further down the room. I quickly shined my light to the end of the room and saw the most harrowing sight I could ever see. It still keeps me awake at night to this day as I write this. and I don't think it'll ever leave me. Suffer me not to be crucified like my Savior, was written on a piece of paper nailed to a corpse. My mom was nailed to an upside-down cross with a star cut into her stomach, blood dripping down it to cover her swollen, bruised face. I couldn't look anymore, so I ran and ran, not stopping until I got back to my room. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I leaned back against the door, breathing heavy and irregularly as I started sobbing and falling to my knees. "Oh, God, help me," I muttered between heavy sobs. Once I composed myself enough, I pulled out my phone and called the police. They arrived shortly and headed straight to the basement. They taped off the room and examined it for what felt like an eternity. I would occasionally see some officers walk in and out of the room while I sat outside of it. Anytime they walked out, I could see that they were also greatly disturbed at what they saw. They took my mom out on a stretcher, but she was already long dead. I pulled together most of my money to get her cremated and had the vase of her ashes on my bedside shelf. It's been 7 months now since the incident. I've absorbed myself in work, taking every shift I can. I saved up to move out into a different apartment complex a few blocks away. I just couldn't bear to stay in the same building anymore. I came back from work one day and crashed on the couch, deciding to type out this whole story just to get this whole thing off my chest. I heard it was therapeutic, so I thought I'd try it. I was halfway through when I heard a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole and didn't see anything, so I opened the door and saw a letter on the floor. I should have known better. I should have left it and moved out, but I didn't. I hadn't had any kind of incident for so long that I let my guard down. I picked it up and closed the door. There was writing on the envelope saying to Bryce. That seemed normal enough, but the one thing that threw me off was that the handwriting matched my mother's 1-to-1. I opened the letter, curiosity filling me as I ripped the seal open and pulled out 2 pictures. One of them was a wooden cross with signs saying, Jesus Nazarenus, Rex Iudiorum. Flipping the photo over showed more text, simply saying, for you. The second photo was of my front door, like it was taken a few inches in front of it with my room number in the frame. I've locked the doors and called the police, but I don't know if that'll help. If someone sees this and you're around Lake Shore Drive in Chicago, then please save me. My room number is 137. I don't have much time. Please. I work at an isolated toll booth. The same car has passed by 3 times. The real horror of working the graveyard shift at a toll plaza isn't the risk of getting robbed or the biting cold. The true terror is the isolation, the crushing sensation that the entire world has died while you're sitting in a rickety chair, surrounded by an ocean of asphalt. My name is Roberto, but the guys at the highway concessionaire call me Beto. I work at the KM 214 toll plaza on the Saravella Highway. It's an infamous stretch in southern Brazil. The highway cuts through a valley completely choked by dense Atlantic forest. There isn't a single town within a 25-mile radius in either direction. It's just a gash in the middle of the woods, an asphalt vein where truckers squeeze through, trying to beat the heavy fog that rolls down the mountains every single night. We have 8 booths at this plaza, but during the midnight to 6 a.m. shift, only 2 stay open. Cabin 1, operated by my coworker Silas, and Cabin 8, the most isolated one, operated by me. Cabin 8 sits on the extreme right, almost pressed against a muddy embankment bordering the road. It's technically meant for heavy vehicles and oversized loads, but let's be honest, in the dead of night, anyone passes through there. It was a Tuesday, and traffic was practically non-existent. Around 1 a.m., the mountain was swallowed by a fog so thick it looked like a wall of dirty cotton. Visibility dropped to less than 30 feet. The overhead lights from the plaza canopy could barely pierce the white soup. I was entirely alone in my tiny 20-square-foot box. Silas was all the way on the other side in Cabin 1, and we couldn't even see each other through the mist. Our only contact was a company walkie-talkie, which hissed sporadically with static from the heavy weather. It was exactly 2:14 a.m. when my routine was broken for the first time. The sound emerged, muffled by the fog, long before the headlights appeared. It was a rumble of an old engine, misfiring slightly. I adjusted myself in my chair, rubbed my heavy eyes, and looked out the road. 2 yellowish beams of light tore through the mist. One of the headlights was clearly misaligned, pointing slightly higher than the other. The car approached slowly, tires almost dragging on the damp asphalt, and pulled up right next to my cabin. It was an old sedan, an early 90s Chevy Monza, painted in a dark color that the lack of light wouldn't let me define as navy blue or black. The paint was dull, the roof sun-baked, and the driver's side door had a deep, jagged dent, as if it had violently scraped against a concrete barrier. The driver's window rolled down. The mechanism was manual, and I could hear the agonizing screech of the crank turning. "Good evening. 960, I said, using my robotic toll worker voice, extending my right hand out the small sliding glass window. The driver didn't answer. I couldn't see his face. He wore a dark baseball cap pulled low and the collar of a leather jacket pulled up to his neck. The only thing illuminated by the fluorescent light of my cabin was his hand, reaching out toward mine. He was holding a 20 raise bill. The money was folded in half. When my fingers brushed the bill to take it, I accidentally grazed the driver's skin. The contact lasted a fraction of a second, but it was enough to trigger a primal alarm of disgust in my brain. The skin was clammy, slimy, and rancid. I yanked my hand back, pulling the note with me. The money was wet, seemingly coated in that same viscous liquid, and had a horizontal tear right across the face printed on the bill. I peered into the dark cabin of the Monza. "Just a minute. Let me get your change," I muttered, wiping the bill on my pants before putting it in the cash drawer. I tried my best to ignore the pungent smell wafting from the paper. I separated a 10 bill and some coins. I reached my arm out again and handed back the change. The hand took the coins without a single word. Not a thank you, not even a nod. The window slowly began to roll up with that same screeching grind. I hit the green button on the panel. The boom barrier lifted. The Monza dropped into first gear with a harsh jolt. The engine misfired twice more, and the car accelerated, vanishing into the wall of white fog just a few yards ahead. Its red taillights faded out as if swallowed by the void. I shook my head, rubbing my hands together to shake off the sensation of that thing. At the toll booth, you deal with all kinds of weirdos. Truckers running on amphetamines who haven't slept in 3 days, fighting couples, people running away from their problems. I mentally categorize them as just another late-night eccentric and try to get back to my crossword puzzle. Time dragged. The digital clock on the register shifted to 3 o'clock, then 3:15, then 3:30. Not a single other vehicle crossed the plaza. Silence reclaimed the space. The fog grew so dense, I couldn't even see the barrier 3 feet from my window. It was at 3:42 a.m. that the sound returned. The same misfiring engine. The same sound of tires dragging on wet asphalt. I looked up from my magazine, frowning. The misaligned headlight pierced the fog once again. The vehicle braked slowly and pulled up exactly at cabin 8. It was the dark Monza, the exact same car, the same sun-baked roof, the same missing hubcap on the front wheel, the same deep, grotesque dent on the driver's door. My brain short-circuited. The KM 214 toll plaza is a point of no return in a valley. If you pass through here heading north, the direction I was charging, there's absolutely no official turnaround, no dirt roads, no intersection for exactly 28 miles until you hit the town of São Lázaro. For that car to be here again, the driver would have had to drive 28 miles forward, make a U-turn in the city, drive 28 miles back, pass through the southbound toll, make another U-turn 12 miles away, and drive back to my cabin. All of that in just over an hour. Mathematically, with an engine misfiring like that, it was impossible. What the hell? I whispered to myself. The Monza's window began to roll down with the same shrill screech. This time, as the glass lowered, the smell invaded my cabin before I could even open my mouth. It wasn't just a funky odor anymore. It was an overwhelming stench, thick, putrid, and unbearable. It was so physical that I gagged, instinctively covering my mouth and nose with the sleeve of my wool sweater. The driver's hand stretched out from the darkness of the car. I couldn't help but look closer. The sleeve of the leather jacket was shredded. The arm reaching toward me did not belong to a healthy person. The skin was a grayish-green hue, bloated, with thick black veins bulging on the back of the hand. Where the fluorescent light from my cabin hit it, I could see the fingernails were cracked and packed with dark, wet clay. The hand was holding a bill. I hesitated. But the standard operating procedure of a toll collector is blind to fear. We have to collect the toll. Holding my breath, I extended 2 fingers, avoiding physical contact at all costs, and snatched the bill from the driver's hand. His arm immediately retreated into the dark interior. I looked at the money under my cabin's bright overhead light. It was a 20 raised bill, soaked in a dark, viscous fluid. But it wasn't just a similar bill. I turned the slippery paper over under the light. Right in the middle of the face, there was a horizontal tear. I quickly yanked open my cash drawer. I looked at the stack of 20s. The bill he had given me an hour ago was sitting right on top. I picked it up. I compared the serial number of the old bill with the one I had just received. They were identical. The exact same serial number. The exact same physical piece of paper. I looked back into the pitch-black car. The driver's head slowly turned toward me. Beneath the shadow of the cap, where his eyes should have been, I only saw a wet glint reflecting my cabin light. Mud was oozing down the side of his face, staining his jacket collar, and his jaw hung loose, slightly dislocated to the left, an angle no living human could sustain. I threw the change at 10 and some coins through the open window onto the passenger seat, slammed my trembling palm against the green button for the barrier, and backed away into the far corner of my cabin, pressing my spine against the fiberglass wall. The Monza didn't accelerate immediately. It just sat there for 5 agonizing seconds, the engine sputtering. I could hear the sound of water dripping heavily from the car's floorboards onto the asphalt, and from the depths of that dark metal box, I heard a sound that resembled a gurgling sigh, like someone trying to breathe through a tube full of mud. Finally, it dropped into first gear. The car moved forward and was swallowed by the white fog once again, vanishing into the night. I lunged to the door of my cabin and locked it from the inside. My legs were shaking so violently that I collapsed into my chair. The smell of rotten river sludge had permeated the tiny interior of the booth. The odor clung to my clothes, to the inside of my nose, to the back of my throat. I unclipped the walkie-talkie from my belt, pressing the talk button with a thumb slick with cold sweat. Silas. Silas, do you copy? Cabin 1, answer me. I yelled into the radio. Static hissed loudly. A few seconds later, my co-worker's bored voice replied. Copied, Beto. What's all the screaming about, man? Run out of coffee over there. Did you see the car that just passed? I asked, nearly choking on my words. A dark Monza, old, crooked headlight. Did he pass your way? Did you see if he pulled a U-turn behind a police outpost or something? A Monza? Beto, a single car hasn't passed through here in over 2 hours. The highway is a ghost town. I can't even see the toll plaza sign. Are you sure you weren't dreaming, man? Silas, he just passed through cabin 8. And it's the second time. It's the exact same car, the exact same bill, the same fucking money, with the same serial number, and the driver. He's messed up. He smells like a corpse. Something is very wrong here. There was a long silence on the radio. Silas knew I wasn't the pranking type. The night shift drains the sense of humor out of everyone. Take it easy, Beto. Are you being serious? Look, lock your cabin. I'm going to radio the highway patrol and ask them to check it out. The operational base is only 3 miles from here. What was the license plate? Did you check the screen? I looked up at the system monitor. When the barrier lifts, a camera automatically snaps a photo of the plate and logs it. Plate KGN 4091. It's from a city in Parana. Give that plate to the troopers. Tell them to intercept. Copy that. KGN 4091. Sit tight in your cabin. Don't open the door for anyone. I dropped the radio on the desk. I stared at the open cash drawer. The 2 identical 20 bills were sitting there, side by side, both stained with that muddy slime. I grabbed a pen and pushed them to the very back of the drawer, refusing to touch them with my bare hands again. At 4:25 a.m., my radio cracked violently. I jumped, grabbing the device. Beto? This is Sergeant Matias, Highway Patrol. Silas asked me to speak directly to you on this frequency. Over. My heart soared with relief. Someone with a gun and a cruiser was handling it. This is Roberto, Sergeant. Thank God. Did you find the Monza? The car was heading north. Sergeant Matias's voice on the other end was heavy, dragging, completely devoid of the usual trooper sarcasm. Roberto, listen to me carefully. Are you absolutely sure the plate the toll system captured was KJN 4091? Are you sure it was a dark Monza with a caved-in door? Absolutely, Sergeant. The camera logged it. I saw it with my own eyes. He passed through here twice. The last time was almost an hour ago. Why? You couldn't find him? It's not a matter of finding him. Roberto. There was a burst of static, sounding almost like a heavy sigh. We checked the system and the concessionaire's logs. The vehicle with plate KGN 4091 was involved in a fatal accident tonight, around 11:45 p.m. The driver lost control on the wet pavement, slammed into the concrete, broke through the barrier, and plummeted off the overpass at kilometer 190. My brain stopped processing. Kilometer 190 was 15 miles before my toll plaza. What do you mean, Sergeant? Fell off the overpass? What time was this? Before midnight, Roberto. The concessionaire's rescue rig is still down there in the river ravine right now. The car is upside down, submerged and mud up to the roof. They just managed to cut through the wreckage with the jaws of life to extract the driver. The coroner already called the time of death. The guy's skull was crushed against a steering column. The body was underwater for over 3 hours, trapped in the seatbelt. My legs gave out completely. I dropped to my knees on the cramped floor of the booth, holding the radio tightly to my face. Sergeant, that's impossible. He drove through here. I took the money right out his hand. Roberto, listen to me. Nobody survives a 150-foot drop into a river full of rocks and mud. The car is totaled. There's no car driving on the highway with that plate. Your camera system must have glitched and repeated an old image, and the sleep deprivation is playing tricks on you. Ask Silas to cover your booth and go drink some water. We're sending a cruiser down there to check on you. But just relax. Over and out. The radio went dead. My back was pressed hard against the metal cabinets beneath the register counter. My mind was desperately trying to reject what my ears had just heard. Do souls not know they're dead? Or do they get trapped on the final route they intended to take? The Monza was driving up the mountain. It needed to pass through the toll. The digital clock above my head let out a soft beep. 4:45 a.m. It was still over an hour until sunrise. The pitch blackness outside was absolute. I was curled up on the floor of the cabin, crying silently, wrapped in a near catatonic state of shock, just waiting for police cruiser to arrive with its sirens blaring to pull me out of this isolated hell. And that was when, over the hum of the electric space heater, I heard the sound. It didn't come from a distance this time. It didn't gradually emerge from the fog. The sound just started, loud and vibrating, less than 15 feet from my cabin window. The misfiring engine. The crooked, yellowish beam of a broken headlight illuminated the fiberglass wall of my cabin from the outside. He had returned. For the third time. My heart wasn't just beating anymore. It was punching my ribs, trying to rip through my chest and escape my body. I clamped my hands over my ears, squeezing my eyes shut, rocking back and forth on the dirty floor. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real, I chanted in a frantic whisper. The sound of the dragging tires stopped precisely next to my window. The car was right there. I waited for the agonizing screech of the window rolling down. The stench that flooded the cabin this time wasn't just rot. It smelled like spilled guts. I didn't get up. I stayed flat on the floor. The cabin window is about 3 feet off the ground, which meant that if I stayed down, whoever was in the car couldn't see me. Silence reigned between us for endless seconds. The Monza's engine bubbled outside. I prayed that if I didn't appear to take his money, he would simply accelerate and drive away into the dark from whence he came. But toll booth logic doesn't work like that. The boom barrier was down. Without payment, the heavy aluminum arm blocked the road. He couldn't pass. He needed to pay his toll to continue his journey into the beyond. From the dark depths of the car outside, the voice spoke. It was not a normal human voice. It was a sound of shredded vocal cords, filled with fluid and mud, resonating through a crushed trachea. It sounded like it was echoing up from the bottom of a dark well. 9 and 60. The thing whispered, the voice dragging through the freezing air and slipping through the gap in my glass window. Open the gate. I didn't move. Hot urine ran down my leg, soaking my uniform pants, but my brain couldn't even register humiliation, only the sheer, paralyzing terror. The sound of something wet slapping against the glass of my cabin made me hold my breath until my lungs burned. A dull, wet thud against the tempered glass just inches above my head. Then another. The thing was knocking on the cabin window. Take the money, the wet whisper pleaded. The voice was more desperate now, loaded with inhuman agony. I looked up, still lying on the floor. From my angle, looking upward to the thick, fog-steamed glass, I could see what was knocking on the window. It wasn't the pale hand with the mud-caked nails. What was rubbing against the glass of my cabin, leaving a trail of dark blood, sludge, and river detritus, was a shattered piece of a human skull, still attached to the remnants of a destroyed face. The entity had dragged itself out of the driver's seat and was hanging out the window of the Monza, its crushed torso pressed hard against the structure of my booth, desperately trying to find a way to shove its bloody money into the register. I slammed my eyes shut. I plugged my ears with all the strength my trembling arms could muster, and I started screaming a disjointed prayer, drowning out the sounds of the outside world, until the siren of the highway patrol finally tore through the fog of Saravelha, bathing the toll plaza in flashing red and blue lights. When the troopers broke the lock on my door and dragged me out in a state of clinical shock, the sun was already starting to dye the sky gray. The Monza was gone. The right lane was empty, bordered only by the dissipating morning mist. They said I had a nervous breakdown brought on by extreme isolation. The company psychiatrist called it a dissociative episode due to sleep deprivation and severe fatigue. They claimed the 2 identical, mud-stained bills in my drawer were just a lapse of my memory or some sick prank I didn't know how to process. But the troopers couldn't explain one thing: the detail that made Sergeant Matthias himself go pale when he inspected the exterior of my cabin in the daylight, on the tempered glass of my window, right at the height where the driver of the Monza had banged his head, tried to hand over the toll for his final ride. There was a thick stain crusted onto the cold surface. It was a clump of human hair mixed with river algae, pinned to the glass by a jagged splinter of skull bone, reeking of stagnant water. The money might have been an illusion, but the toll for the afterlife always has to be paid. And if you work the graveyard shift, isolated in the fog, you can never afford to leave the gate closed when the dead come to settle their accounts. The red ice cream. I was not very fond of eating ice cream. Not just ice cream, but fast food as a whole. For me, homemade food was the best. But a new shop opened near our house and gained attention for its unique taste. The store was called the Pork Cattle. Not because it had pork in it, but because the shopkeeper's nose was round and flattened like a pig's snout. One day, my friends insisted that I try their ice cream. Even though I didn't want to, I did, just for the sake of not upsetting my friend. The shopkeeper smiled and said, "Eat this, kid, an ice cream you can never have anywhere else," and then handed me a bar. It gave off the scent of gym equipment. It was a red, glowing ice cream, already melting. When I licked it for the first time, I was transported into a beautiful garden, where I found many people I had never met. Everywhere I looked, I saw flowers. I was catching butterflies with others, a taste so sweet, so heavenly, that I had never experienced in this world. I thank my friend for introducing me to something like that. From that day on, I spent all my money on that ice cream. I stopped eating at home. His store stayed open all night and closed during the afternoon, which was strange. One night, I couldn't sleep. Ice creams kept appearing in my dreams, but I had no money. So I decided to steal some from my dad's wallet. When I was doing it, my dad caught me. He scolded me, saying that eating ice cream would become an obsession. He still gave me some money, but warned me never to steal again. When I went there, I found a huge crowd standing outside. The shop was closed, and the shopkeeper was being taken away by the police. After asking someone in the crowd, I learned that the ice cream he made was created using people's blood, which he froze, and the leftover bodies he used to eat. He used to lure lonely people at night to his store, mostly children. He got caught when one of his customers found a tooth in his frozen ice cream, and then many unidentified bodies were discovered in his apartment. I was shocked and disgusted. I went back home and vomited. My parents found out what had happened the next day from others and assured me not to feel bad, because something worse could have happened. I could have been one of his victims. I still feel horrible that I betrayed my parents, and I am so terrified that I don't drink or eat anything red anymore. My first night working in a morgue still haunts me. My first night working in a morgue still haunts me, and I wish I could say I imagined it. This happened a few years ago when I got a night job as an assistant at a small hospital morgue. My shift started at midnight and ended at 6 in the morning. Most of the work was simple: logging bodies, keeping the place clean, and making sure everything stayed organized. The morgue was in a hospital basement, cold and quiet, with a row of metal drawers along the wall. Before leaving that night, the senior technician told me something that stuck in my mind. "Old building," he said. "You'll hear strange noises sometimes. Just ignore them." At first, the night was completely normal. I sat at the desk doing paperwork and occasionally checking my phone. Around 1:40 a.m., paramedics brought in a body from a car accident. A young man. I helped place him into drawer number 6 and logged the time. After that, everything went quiet again. About 30 minutes later, I heard a faint metallic sound behind me. It was like something lightly hitting steel. I turned around and looked at the wall of drawers, but nothing seemed out of place. Then I heard it again. This time it sounded like scratching. I slowly walked closer to the drawers, trying to convince myself it was just a cooling system or old pipes. But the sound kept coming back, faint but clear, and it was coming from drawer number 6, the same drawer where I had placed the body. My heart started beating faster. I stood there staring at it, telling myself it was impossible. The paramedics had already confirmed he was dead. Then the handle moved slightly, just a small twitch, but enough for me to notice. I hesitated for a moment before slowly pulling the drawer open. The body was still there, lying on the tray exactly where I had left it. I felt stupid for getting scared and started to close the drawer again. That's when I noticed something. His eyes were open. I froze. I knew they had been closed earlier. I clearly remembered that, but now they were wide open, staring straight up at the ceiling. Before I could react, one of his fingers slowly twitched. I slammed the drawer shut and backed away, so fast I nearly tripped over a chair. My hands were shaking as I called the medical examiner. When he arrived and opened the drawer again, everything looked normal. The body was lying still with both eyes closed. No one believed what I told them, but I know what I saw, and I never worked another night shift in a morgue again. My son broke character at the breakfast table. He wasn't acting like himself. He wasn't fighting with his siblings, who were unusually quiet. Callie sat silently, pushing her breakfast around her plate. There was no brutal fight to the death over the bathroom. No constant bickering about cereal. Zach wasn't kicking his siblings under the table to start arguments. And I didn't have to shout once. It was far too quiet. "Jonas." I spoke up, looking up from my iPad. It was too quiet, which meant my children were either sick or something was brewing. Jonas, my eldest at 16, was usually the instigator, but he couldn't even look me in the eye. "What's going on?" I set down my iPad and across the table. Zach flinched, gaze glued to his bowl of untouched cereal. Callie ducked her head, thick brown strands hanging in her face. I knew this stance. I knew my children. Too quiet and guilty. Just like 5 years ago when they shattered my mom's vase, playing the floor as lava. They'd broken something. I sighed, noticing the atmosphere. Jonas and Zach were clearly trying to stay silent. And Callie was one squeak away from singing like canary. "All right, as long as it's not your grandfather's urn. I don't care what you've broken, as long as you fix it. Dad's hurting us." At first, I didn't even hear my son. I was too busy reaching across the table and grabbing maple syrup for my pancakes. But then he said it again, stabbing his fork through his breakfast. His voice choked up. "Dad's hurting us." Zach said, snapped up, narrowed eyes glued to his brother. Frightened. "What are you doing?" he hissed. Zach straightened up with a tense smile. "It's okay, Mom. Jonas is just... he's hurting us." Jonas whispered, curling into himself. His eyes found mine. Hollow, broken. How did I not notice? How did I not see the shadows under his eyes? The agony crease between his brows? I'm not staying silent anymore, he whispered. You too can, but I'm not. Jonas glared down at the table. I fucking can't do this anymore. He broke into sobs that immediately broke my heart. I stood and aimed to wrap my arms around my son, but the second I touched him, he flinched away, eyes wide, almost feral. He shoved me back, diving to his feet. No, get away from me. Ignoring him, I wrapped my arms around him, and after fighting me, screaming and sobbing at me to get away, he melted into my shoulder, sniffling. I stayed very calm, but my chest was aching. I pulled away from the hug, trying to smile. Show me, I said, steadying my voice. I couldn't scream. If I showed my children I was scared, I would scare them. Mom, Callie spoke up. Callie, stay here. I said, you too, Zach. I turned to my son. Tell me everything, okay? Everything, sweetheart. I grasped his shoulders. I'm not mad, and I promise I believe you. Jonas nodded and ran upstairs. I followed him on shaky legs, my heart in my throat. Jonas led me inside his room. He shared with Zach. When you go to bed, Dad comes in our room and makes sure we're restrained. Jonas lifted up his pillows, and there, looped around his bed frame, were chains. Jonas turned to face me. Ever since we tried to run, he's chained us to our beds. You try to run away? I choked out. Why? Thick bile crawled up my throat when my son stepped in front of me. His expression crumpled. Mom, he whispered, there's something I need to tell you. Jonas grasped my shoulders, his nails digging in. Harsh. But you can't freak out, all right? You can't call Dad. Just listen to me. I nodded, breathless, as he took my hand and led me back downstairs. 5 years ago, a man approached me on the street in L.A. I was 15 and trying to be an actor, he said, leading me out into the backyard. He said I would be paid in full every week, $500, for one simple job. Jonas let go of my hand, and all I had to do was pretend to be your son. Jonas's hand slipped from mine. But then he stopped paying us, he whispered. We tried to leave, tried to call the cops, but he was forceful. He punched Zach in the face and drugged our drinks at night. He started chaining us up when you weren't here, and now we're prisoners. He sputtered. I'm not even from here. I'm from Texas. I ran away to L.A. because I thought I wanted to be an actor, but I'm done playing a fucking dead kid. Jonas ducked his head. We just want to go home, Mrs. McCarthy. Jonas shook his head. Mom. He corrected himself. So, we're gonna go. Zach's voice startled me. He was standing behind me, grasping hold of Callie's hand. I'm sorry for your loss, he whispered. But we're not your children. He nodded at Jonas. Get your shit, Jack. We're going. Jonas nodded. He gave me a quick hug. Thank you for saving us, he said. And I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. McCarthy. I stood, numb, as the three of them started toward the fence. And I was reaching into my jeans and pulling out my gun. Something inside me exploded, and I let out a shriek of laughter. I started forwards, pressing the gun into my sweet daughter's head. Stupid kids. I spoke through gritted teeth. I wasn't losing them again. I buried my children once. Never again. Your father ran the auditions, I said, clicking off the safety. I lowered the barrel to Callie's calf. Run and I'll cut off your legs. They froze, and I took pleasure in my next words. But who do you think chose you? An emergency alert is only being directed at me. This all started about a week ago. I had been at work stacking pallets when my phone went off. The noise itself wasn't too odd, just a regular OL, prolonged buzz of emergency alert that makes you sit up a little straighter and heightens your senses a bit. What was odd was the fact that it was only my phone that had gone off. Usually, when this kind of thing happens, you can pretty much hear a full string of the sound in a wave that crashes across the entire room, jumping from one phone to the next until all you can hear is that specific buzz burrowing into your eardrum. I glanced around the warehouse. expecting to see others looking down at their phones, concerned. But they were all just working, continuing to pull their pallet jacks around while their eyes maintained almost lifeless expressions. Scratching my head a bit, I kind of just shrugged everything off and reached to pull my phone from my pocket. I read the message in my head and felt my heart flip-flop as my eyes landed on the final word. This is a message from the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. They know what you did. You are being observed. Leave work immediately and await further instructions. My head shot up from my phone. For a moment, I thought that I was having a relapse. I was doing so well. They discharged me from the hospital nearly 3 months ago. I was terrified that all of my progress was going down the drain. That is until I noticed it seemed like every pair of eyes had fallen upon me. Everyone just stared at me as though I was an alien from another dimension. Their lifeless expressions were now gone and had been replaced by looks of malice, like I had personally insulted each of them by taking up space. Their stares overwhelmed me, and I crept slowly back toward the exit. As I pushed through the exit door, my pace turned to jog as I scurried toward the bus stop. My eyes remained fixed to the ground as I ran, and they didn't come up again until I reached the stop. I sat on the bench, rocking back and forth as my anxiety rose and felt like a heartbeat. It wasn't my fault. I swear it wasn't my fault. The bus finally arrived, and I boarded the vehicle along with a nice old lady with a cane. I kept my head down and pushed my way to the very back, where I sat and stared out the window as we pulled away from the stop. The little old lady sat adjacent to me and kept her eyes forward. I had been lost in my own mind, staring out that window, when I heard the lady's voice call out to me. "You have lovely eyes," she smiled. "Reminds me of my grandson's eyes." Look, I'm only human. I couldn't keep the stoicism up against everything. I smiled back at her and thanked her for such a generous compliment, feeling a warmth in my heart that was more than appreciated at a moment like this. However, the lady stared for a bit longer than I thought appropriate, and that smile never left her face. I attempted to break away and could feel her eyes continuing to burn into me, even as my face returned to the window. Suddenly, my phone began to buzz with that familiar sound. This is a message from a National Wireless Emergency Alert System. She is lying to you. She has no grandchildren. She knows. Evacuate the bus immediately. I felt a wave of dizziness and nausea wash over me, and I struggled to pull the stop request cord. The woman now wore the same look of malice as my co-workers, and through gritted teeth she uttered, "You should be ashamed of yourself, young man," as she watched me exit the vehicle. Luckily, my house was only a few blocks away, and walking there seemed to be my best bet. As I walked, my phone continued to buzz almost constantly. "You are being observed. They know. They want you to die." It was as though any time I passed someone, my phone would alert me, like I was the punchline to some kind of cosmic joke. I never dared make eye contact with these people, but I could feel their eyes on me every single time. I decided to begin talking to myself. Everything's okay. Everything's okay. You have to forgive yourself. You have to forgive yourself. As I rambled like a madman, another alert came from my device. You are being followed. My shoes scraped against the pavement as I stopped in place. Turning my head slowly, I found that an entire crowd of people behind me had stopped as well. They looked ferocious, animalistic. Almost, I expected them to rush me at any moment. My phone buzzed again. Run. At breakneck speed, I turned and began full-on sprinting toward my house. I could hear the sound of dozens of footsteps behind me as the crowd followed. I reached my front porch and flew up the steps and through the door, bolting it closed behind me as the people swarmed my porch and gazing at me through the windows. I began to cry as I begged for their forgiveness. The accident hadn't been my fault. She shot herself in front of me. I was traumatized. The courts found me innocent. I hadn't done anything. They had to understand that. I wasn't the best partner, I know, but I'd never murder somebody, let alone the love of my life. I know I could have done more to help her. I could have saved her that day. I could have done a lot of things, but the choice to kill herself was hers, and hers alone. As the people stared at me, rage and hatred plastered on their faces. My phone buzzed again. They know what you told her to do. As I said, this all happened about a week ago. This entire week has felt like hell. The things on my porch have not left from their spots at the windows. There are hundreds of them now. They've even began to spill into the streets, refusing to take their eyes off of me. It's made leaving impossible. Maybe this is for the best. Maybe I'm meant to slowly rot away in the same house where it happened. Maybe this is how things were always meant to be. Miranda, I miss you so much. I still love you, and I hope that, wherever you are, you have forgiven me. My roommate is a serial killer. This is my testimony. I didn't think I was the kind of person who could get lucky anymore. That's dramatic, I know, but last year was one of those stretches where everything that could wobble did. My job cut my hours. My girlfriend cheated and left. I burned through what little savings I had pretending things were temporary. They weren't. By the time I started looking for a new place, I was down to a duffel bag, a mattress topper, and a laptop with a cracked hinge. That's when I found the listing. It was posted in a small housing group for our town, one of those upscale rural places that pretends it isn't rural. Think boutique coffee shops next to feed stores. Expensive apartments surrounded by empty fields. People with money who don't want noise. The ad was simple. Room for rent. Clean. Quiet. No drama. $300 flat. Utilities included. $300 for a one-bedroom share in that building was insane. Studios there went for triple that. I assumed it was fake. But I messaged anyway. He replied within 10 minutes. His name was Daniel. He said he owned the apartment but traveled for work and preferred having someone around, so the place didn't sit empty. Said he liked structure. Said he'd had bad roommate experiences before but was willing to try again. We met that same night at a brewery downtown. He didn't look like a scammer. Mid-30s, clean cut, soft-spoken, the kind of guy who folds his napkin instead of crumpling it. He asked normal questions. Work, hobbies, how long I planned to stay. When I asked why rent was so cheap, he shrugged. Peace of mind, he said. Money isn't the issue. Stability is. I should have thought that was strange. I didn't. The apartment was nicer than anywhere I'd lived before. Top floor, vaulted ceilings, quiet hallway, neutral colors. Everything staged like a model unit. The first thing I noticed were the walls. Several sections in the hallway had slightly different paint texture. You wouldn't see it unless you were looking. The patches were neat, professional, but they were there. Pipe burst last year, Daniel explained when he saw me glancing at it. Insurance nightmare. Had to redo some drywall. He said it casually, like he'd rehearsed it. Then he went over the rules. He called them house boundaries. No guests. Ever. Don't tamper with the walls or utility closet. Text of staying out past midnight. Keep the place clean. He meant spotless. No pets. If I smelled anything strange, it was probably the plumbing. Don't try to fix it myself. They weren't insane. Just strict. I needed cheap rent more than I needed freedom. So I agreed. Living with Daniel was calm, to say the least. He was tidy, predictable, almost quiet to the point of invisibility. Some days I barely heard him. He worked from home consulting, whatever that meant. His office door stayed closed most of the time. He never had visitors. Never got personal mail beyond generic envelopes. No photos anywhere. Just abstract art prints you buy in sets. The fridge was organized like a diagram. Labels forward. Expiration dates visible. If something ran low, it was replaced immediately. Sometimes I'd notice brands change, like the milk would be a different company than the one from the week before. I assumed he shopped sales. He vacuumed twice a week. He wiped the baseboards. He cleaned the walls. Actually, that's not true. He wiped the walls. Specifically, he would be diligent on the patched sections. That part stuck with me later. At the time, I thought he was just one of those obsessiveness freaks. Germaphobes even, or what my granddad would call one of them neat nicks. I didn't break the guest rule for almost a month. Not because I respected it, because I didn't want to risk losing the place. But one night, I met a girl at a bar downtown. Her name was Mara. She had the silver ring on her right hand. Turquoise stone, slightly chipped along the edge. I remember because she kept twisting it when she talked. She wasn't from town, just passing through for a few weeks for work. We hit it off. I told her I had roommates, but they were chill. That was the first lie. We went back to my place. I justified it to myself because Daniel was out doing whatever he did out late. When we walked in, she looked around and said, "This place is nice. Doesn't look like two guys live here." I laughed, said he was particular. We ordered food and flipped through streaming options. That's when we landed on a documentary. She and I bonded over our love for true crime. So it was a total pull that my Netflix account assisted. It was about an unidentified serial offender operating in upstate counties. The media called him the vacancy squatter. I remember joking that the title sounded like a rejected horror movie. The documentary said the killer targeted homes whose owners were on extended vacations. He'd break in, live there for weeks, sometimes months. The interior would remain almost untouched, except for subtle differences. Groceries replaced with different brands. Furniture shifted by inches. New drywall patches discovered months later. The theory of this killer was he would aim for sex workers, for several women in different counties would go missing. Those disappearances weren't immediately linked at first. One homeowner never came back from a supposed trip. Authorities are still looking to find who this killer is, but the documentary was more of a speculative hit piece than any conclusive case. After it was over, Mara and I debated if all those killings, 8 is what they said, are really linked to one killer or just separate incidents. Mara nudged me. "Imagine watching this in a stranger's apartment," she said. I told her she was paranoid. She sat up and went to use the bathroom. A moment later, that's when I heard a knock coming from the hallway. I turned with a slight race in my heart to see she was tapping on the drywall with her tongue sticking out, just playful. But then she asked after tapping again, "Why does that sound hollow?" she asked. I froze, remembering Daniel's rules. But oddly it did sound hollow. Not like insulation, like empty space. Daniel's bedroom door opened. I'd never seen him move that fast. He stood there, face blank. Not angry, not confused, just blank. "Who is this?" he asked calmly. I started apologizing immediately, saying I thought he was out and wouldn't hurt to bring someone over. Mara smiled awkwardly and said she was just heading to the bathroom. She walked down the hall. Daniel didn't take his eyes off me. For the first time, I noticed something different about them. They weren't cold. They were calculating. "I don't like unpredictability," he said softly. "It disrupts structure." I told him it wouldn't happen again. He nodded. "It won't," he said with a straight glare. Then he went back into his room. She came back minutes later. "Well, he's Mr. Sunshine, isn't he?" she whispered. To shape the awkwardness, I recalled that she mentioned about her love for vintage items. I told her I had an old pocket watch and told her I'll go grab it. She smiled and took a sip of her beer. I excused myself and headed to my room. It took me a while to find it, but after digging into my drawers, I found it. Returning to the living room, I froze midway in the hallway. She was gone. Her purse was gone from the counter. Her jacket gone from the chair. I felt stupid first, then confused. I checked my phone. No message. I walked into the living room. Daniel was sitting on the couch like nothing happened. "She left," he said without looking at me. "What?" She said she needed to get rest, for she had worked early in the morning. That didn't make sense. She didn't seem to dash. "Dude, I'm gonna be real with you. Don't think she wanted to tango with your mango, if you catch my drift." That was the longest sentence I heard from Daniel. Didn't think he was capable of it, honestly. But after he let out a sigh and shrug, he turned over to meet my gaze. "Hey man, sorry for cock-blocking. Some people avoid confrontation, so don't take this rejection to hard, buddy." I don't know why that embarrassed me, but it did. I texted her a couple times. No reply. I didn't know her last name. Didn't know where she was staying. By morning, I convinced myself she ghosted. It happens, right? About a week later, I started noticing a smell. I was gone for work, getting overtime hours for 2 graveyard shifts, but when I returned to the apartment, it hit me like a crude awakening. It wasn't constant. Ever so faint, but noticeable when you walk in. Sweet, metallic. I assumed it was a trash. Then plumbing. Then maybe something dead in the walls. Maybe a rodent. Daniel's demeanor changed too. He was a lot more joyous, if that even makes sense. He was happy to see me back and asked how work was. When I asked him about the smell, he said it was old pipes reacting to the humidity. He'd call maintenance. They'd look at it for him before. After I came home from another graveyard shift, the smell faded, then came back stronger. I noticed a new patch in the hallway. Fresh paint, perfectly blended. I didn't remember it being there. I figured that's where the source of the problem was. Strangest thing happened. A woman approached me outside my job. Mid-30s, tired eyes, holding a printed photograph. "Do you live at the Riverstone building?" she asked. I hesitated. "Sure." I remarked in a tired tone but hesitant. She showed me the photo. A man who looked like Daniel, but heavier, slightly older. "This is my brother," she said. "Have you seen him?" I told her I lived with Daniel. She went pale. "My brother's name is Daniel." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, my roommate too." She stared at me. "My brother hasn't answered his phone in 2 months." Something in my stomach shifted. I told her she must be mistaken. She asked for the apartment number. I didn't give it. "Girl, what?" She begged me to ask Daniel to please reply to her. She misses him. That, and something about their father is terminally ill. That night, I asked Daniel about it. He sighed like I'd annoyed him. "Family drama," he said. "My sister exaggerates. I've been distancing myself." He smiled gently. "Don't let unstable people shake you." I wanted to believe him, so I did. The smell got worse after that. Thicker, lingering. Daniel started burning candles, cleaning more aggressively. Then one morning, he told me he was going to go visit family out of state. He packed light, left quietly during the night. He didn't come back. A week passed. Another went. Rent was coming, and I texted him if he was coming back, or he had left his half for me to pay the rent for the month. Then 3. The smell didn't fade. It grew. I called my friend and told him about my situation. How I suspect that my roommate just left me to rot. Asked if I could crash for a while, for the smell was getting to me. Between the sisters showing up and Daniel disappearing, something felt incredibly off. I started packing. While pulling my bed frame away from the wall, I dropped my phone. It slid under a loose floorboard. I knelt down to retrieve it. The board lifted too easily. Underneath was plastic sheeting, duct tape, and a small object caught in the corner. Silver. Turquoise stone, chipped along the edge. Fuck. My hands went cold. My ears started ringing. Not loud, just a thin, steady tone like pressure building behind my eyes. I didn't think. I stood up too fast and hit my head on the edge of the bed frame. I barely felt it. I turned toward the wall behind my bed. I don't know what I expected. Blood, stains, something obvious. Instead, it looked normal. Too normal. The paint was smooth, slightly glossier than the rest of the room, but only if you were looking for it. I stepped closer, pressed my knuckles against it. It didn't thud like drywall packed with insulation. It echoed, hollow. I pressed harder. The smell hit immediately, not overwhelming, not like rot in the open air. It was thick, sweet, metallic, close, right there, behind where my head had rested every night for the past month. I staggered back and gagged. My hand was still clenched around the ring. I ran out into the utility closet, which smelled faintly of cleaner and something older beneath it. Metallic, damp, shelves lined the back wall, neatly arranged bottles of bleach, contractor-grade trash bags, replacement light fixtures still in packaging, but lower down, tucked behind a plastic storage bin, were tools that didn't match the rest of the apartment. A hacksaw, a rubber mallet, a short-handled sledge, heavy-duty shears. None of them dusty, none of them old. I don't know what made me carry the hammer back to my room. I told myself I just needed a look, just enough to prove I was overthinking. The section of wall where Mara had tapped sounded wrong now that I was listening for it. Too hollow, too thin. The first hit barely dented it. The second cracked through the drywall with a dull snap. Dust drifted down onto my shoes. I widened the hole slowly, carefully, like I was afraid of waking something up. When the opening was big enough, I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through insulation first, then plastic, clear plastic wrap, stretched tight against something behind it. For a second, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then the plastic shifted slightly in the air from the hole I'd made, and I rolled toward the light. It wasn't wide. It wasn't blinking. It was just there, clouded, pressed against the inside of the wrap. Looking back at me, I remember standing in the hallway waiting for police, staring at that hole in the wall and thinking about the documentary, about the hollow sound, about how she'd laughed when she knocked on it. It took them less than 10 minutes to arrive. I must have sounded hysterical over the phone, but they must have made out for my state of panic. There's bodies in the walls. One of them knocked on the wall the way I had. The sound was wrong. They cut into it. The first slice of drywall fell inward like paper. The smell that came out made one of the officers turn away immediately. They found her first, folded carefully, wrapped in plastic, tucked into the cavity, like insulation. Her hair still tied back the way it had been that night. The ring-size indentation on her finger was empty. I didn't see much after that. They pulled me out into the hallway, sat me down, asked questions I could barely process. When they opened the other patch sections in the apartment, they found more. They concluded that there were 2 bodies total. One of them matched the man from Photo the Woman had shown me outside my job, the real Daniel. He'd been there the longest. The cavity behind my bed was where she was placed. There were other patches in my room that they cut into. The insulation had been removed completely. The space was clean, measured precisely between the studs. No bodies were found, but something was found, lined with plastic already stapled into place, like it had been prepared. On the inner wooden beam, written in pencil in small, controlled handwriting, was one word. Soon. I don't remember throwing up, but they told me I did. They asked how long I'd been living there, when I'd met him, whether I'd noticed anything unusual. I told them everything. The rules, the documentary, the sister, the smell, the milk brands changing, every small detail that had felt meaningless until it wasn't. They believe he killed the real owner first, took his ID, his bank access, his lease, his life. They think he rented the spare room to me to make it look legitimate, to help with bills, to have someone who could say, yeah, he lives there, an alibi with a toothbrush in the bathroom. They say predators like structure, routine, escalation. They think Mara disrupted something. Or maybe I did. He left before finishing. That's what one detective told me. Left before finishing. I moved out that same week. I didn't take much with me. Most of it went into evidence bags anyway. I don't stay in places long now. I don't mount things on walls. I don't push furniture flush against drywall. In hotels, I knock on the walls. Just lightly. Listening. Last week there was an article online about a home 3 counties over. Owners returned from a 2-month vacation. Minor interior repairs noticed. Several women reported missing in the area. Investigators believe the suspect may have unlawfully occupied the property for a short period. No arrest has been made. I don't read those articles all the way through anymore. I don't need to. They never caught him. He's still out there, and I was his roommate. Return to the sender to confirm delivery. Have you ever wondered about the mail of previous tenants you receive in your mailbox? People who have spent most of their adult lives as tenants might relate better to that statement. I am writing this to give a recount of an incident that happened to me years ago. Something I almost flushed out of my memory until now. 2 years ago, I moved fresh into the city of Roverton, Tennessee, for my new job. It was a small gray town right next to the Mississippi River. What I mean by gray is that it had very little in the way of vegetation, and everywhere you could see there was only one thing: concrete. I didn't mind it. My daily commute usually involved just driving to work and then driving to grocery stores, with a pinch of liquor store visits from time to time. Other than that, I was quite content staying home. One hobby I acquired, as every person living by themselves eventually does, is buying and returning things. I would get this urge to order a new, completely useless set of guitar strings, thinking that finally I would be able to give time to learning guitar if I just got these new nylon strings. Then would begin the thrill of waiting for it to be delivered, only for the thrill to be diminished as soon as I got my hands on it, which then started the second phase of me waiting for the refund to reflect in my bank account. This led me to visit the mailroom in my apartment building multiple times. Sometimes it would be what I was looking for, while other times it would be just junk mail, dozens of them. The thing with apartment life is that you don't just get your mail delivered to you, but also the mail of every single person who inhabited that same apartment before you. I always used to toss these away without a second thought, but once in a while I would find a completely black envelope in between the stacks. It had no address written on it. I used to toss it along with the others, thinking it was just clever marketing to pique your curiosity, which it unfortunately did one day when I decided to open it. The envelope was completely black, as if it had been soaked in ink. I ran my fingers across it before tearing it from the top. To my surprise, there was only a single white slip inside with words written on it. Return to the sender, confirmed delivery. Underneath it were coordinates and a date and time. The coordinates printed beneath the words meant nothing to me at first. I had to copy them into my phone to understand where they pointed. The location was just outside Robertson's outer ring road, somewhere past the industrial district where warehouses ended and flat land began. The date was 3 days away. The time was 11:47 p.m. I kept the slip on my kitchen counter that night. There is something about an instruction that is incomplete that unsettles you more than one that is clear. If it had said meet here, I would have dismissed it. If it had demanded something specific, I would have ignored it. But return to the sender to confirm delivery suggested that something had already happened, something that required confirmation, and confirmation requires a participant. Over the next 2 days, I found myself thinking about it more than I expected, not obsessively, just in the background, the way a song lingers after you hear it once. I checked the envelope again to see if I had missed anything. There was no watermark, not even any indentation from the pen pressing too hard. On the third night, at around 11:10, I told myself I would at least drive past the coordinates, just to put to rest. The roads outside Riverton thinned out quickly. Concrete gave way to gravel, and streetlights became occasional. The Mississippi sat somewhere beyond the darkness, but I couldn't see it at night. I only saw the sense of the open space between. The coordinates led me to a narrow stretch of field bordered by a low wire fence. There was a single flashlight on the ground some distance away from the road, its light flickering intermittently, barely visible. I parked by the shoulder and stayed in my car for several minutes while the engine kept running, hindering the silence of that place. Eventually I stepped out, taking the envelope with me. The grass was short and dry, crunching softly beneath my shoes. The air smelled faintly metallic, as if rain had passed earlier, though the ground was not wet. The cardboard box was already there next to the flashlight. It did not look placed with care. It looked as though someone had simply set it down and walked away. On its top surface, written in deliberate black letters, were the words, "Return to sender." I stood there longer than I should have, half expecting someone to emerge in the dark and explain that this had all been a misunderstanding. No one did, so I slid the envelope inside and dropped the box. It made a hollow sound as it landed. I waited a few seconds more, as if something might happen immediately, but the night remained unchanged. I walked back to my car and drove home feeling foolish, mildly embarrassed by my own participation in what I was certain had to be some elaborate prank. Nothing happened for a month after that. In fact, the longer nothing happened, the more convinced I became that I had imagined the strangeness of it. Work resumed its routine dullness. My guitar strings arrived and were returned unopened. Riverton continued being gray and indifferent. Then one afternoon, tucked between a credit card offer and a grocery flyer, there was again another black envelope. I did not open it immediately this time. I carried it upstairs and placed it on the table. I remember noticing how normal everything else in my apartment looked. The sink had dishes in it. The television remote lay crooked on the couch. Sunlight filtered through blinds and thin, dusty beams. The envelope sat in the middle of all of that, indifferent to all of it, Inside was a slip with only one word: delivered. Below it, new coordinates were written out in same font, with new date and time. I told myself I would not go, but the curiosity that drives you to open packages you do not need also drives you to seek closure where there is none. On the designated night, I found myself driving again toward the outskirts of the city. The same flashlight laid in the middle of a different grassy land, different yet somehow familiar in its silence. Next to the flashlight, the same cardboard box laid. I could tell it was the same one because of the identical scratches and folds. But this time the words were not there, only a thick streak of black marker in their place. I noticed a slight indentation in the ground beneath the weight. I lifted it, and it was undeniably heavier. The box was sealed loosely with tape along one edge. I peeled it back slowly, and inside was a clear plastic zip bag, thick and transparent, the kind used for storing food. Moisture clung to the interior surface. On the outside of the bag was a printed label: Best Before, September 17th, 24. I will not describe it in unnecessary detail, as I also have tried my best to forget it. It was a human hand. It looked recently severed, cleanly cut with no obvious decay. The skin tone was pale, but not discolored. I stood there holding the bag. There is a peculiar stillness that accompanies shock. I did not scream. I did not drop to my knees. I simply closed the box, set it down, and walked back to my car with a steadiness that did not feel like my own. The police returned with me 20 minutes later to find no such box. Thinking back on it, I realized that it was a mistake to leave it there. The field stretched empty under their flashlights. One of the officers walked the perimeter twice. He asked if I had consumed alcohol. I had not. He asked if I had enemies. I did not. They left after advising me to get some rest. In daylight, I drove back alone, to find nothing unusual about the place. There was no evidence of a severed human hand being right there where I stood, and no amount of daylight could make me see what wasn't there. It is difficult to argue with an absence. For weeks afterward, I checked my hands compulsively. I examined my fingers while brushing my teeth. I pressed my thumb into my palm as if to confirm attachment. I avoided the mailroom entirely. Eventually, I moved, not because of the incident. At least that is what I told myself. A better job offer came through. A different city with more trees, and less concrete this time. 2 years passed since then, and time as a way of sanding down even the sharpest memories until they feel imagined. Last week, I went down to my building's mailroom to retrieve a package. The room is brighter than the one in Riverton. There are windows near the ceiling that let in afternoon light. People leave their outgoing mail stacked on a small table by the entrance. As I sorted through my box, I noticed a pile on that table belonging to someone else. Bills, a catalog, a padded envelope, and among them, resting quietly as though it belonged there, was a completely matte black envelope. There was no name or address on it. There was no explanation for it. I did not touch it. I stood there longer than I care to admit, watching the door as if expecting its owner to appear. Eventually, someone did. A man I have seen in passing, but never spoken to. He collected his stack casually and left. The black envelope went with him. I have not seen him since. I do not know whether he opened it. I do not know whether he drove to the coordinates. I do not know what was waiting inside his box. What unsettles me is not that it followed me. It did not. What unsettles me is that it never belonged to me at all. It is a service which operates quietly. It requires confirmation, and someone else has just confirmed delivery. I do not know what to do with this information. The police will not investigate a memory. I cannot go talk to anyone about this without sounding unwell, so I am writing this here. If you receive mail that does not belong to you, toss it. And if one day you find an envelope that does not belong to anyone at all, do not let your curiosity answer it. How am I pregnant again? My 50th birthday was in a week, and I was so excited for my party. My children, now in their 20s, were coming home from college, and the idea of seeing them after a whole year was warm. I'm nothing without my kids. When my babies left home, I felt lost. Yes, they sent texts and called and sometimes came to visit, but it wasn't enough. I felt like part of me had jumped into the Uber with their bags and faded into oblivion. I never wanted kids. Initially, the thought of them was a burden to my younger self. But then came Jay. He came out of nowhere. No pregnancy symptoms, no vomiting, just my belly blowing to the size of a balloon overnight. I was 22 and head over heels for my now husband. I was also stupid. Protection no longer existed. Neither did abortion, unless I want to go down the back alley route. Multiple back alley abortions ended in women bleeding out, or worse, being caught for attempting. My husband felt differently. He did want a child. So, I was stuck with a baby growing inside me that I didn't want, for most of the pregnancy. I barely interacted with my bump. I was ready to give it up for adoption. Part of me wanted it to die. I didn't want it. How could I give a life and raise something I didn't want? Wasn't that cruel? When Dr. Mark scanned my belly with a big smile and said, "Congratulations, Mara, it's a healthy baby boy," I hauled myself off of the observation table and told him to go fuck himself. But then I met my son. Something changed. I don't know. It's like when he was in my arms. I felt different. I needed to protect this child no matter what. I named him Jay because it was the first name that came to mind. Jay was the perfect baby. He never screamed, barely cried, always nestling his tiny head in the crook of my shoulder. I wasn't expecting to get pregnant so soon after. Just like with Jay, I woke to find my bulging belly hanging over my pajamas, which was crazy because I didn't remember having sex. I said it was too uncomfortable, especially just after having Jay. My husband agreed. So we hadn't had sex in months. I thought it was just added weight, but my doctor confirmed I was pregnant. I wasn't just pregnant. My ultrasound later in the pregnancy showed 2 bodies, 2 hearts. I was pregnant with twins. Unlike my first pregnancy, I was thrilled. Jay was a toddler. So he helped me paint the spare room for his twin sisters, and the pregnancy itself was surprisingly easy. I didn't need any oxygen, delivering 2 perfectly healthy baby girls. I was so happy. I was content with my 3 babies. Jay, Olive, and Rosie. Jay was jealous of the babies at first, but grew attached to them as they began to grow. When Jay turned 5, I fell pregnant again. My 4th child came very quickly. Too quickly. I hadn't had sex in years. So how could I be pregnant again? Dr. Mark seemed unfazed, insisting some women were prone to it. I barely delivered baby Abigail. Another girl, my body exhausted, my bones aching, with baby Abigail in my arms. I told myself I was done. No more babies. My body couldn't physically and mentally take it. Thankfully, I had no more children. My 4 babies grew up into beautiful, talented adults, and now they were coming to see their old mom. With my husband away collecting them from the airport, I headed into the attic to find the party decorations, but in the box were the happy birthday banners. Sat several tapes I didn't remember. There was our wedding tape, of course, but the others were blank. No names. Inserting the first tape into an old VCR, I watched the screen flicker through buzzing static before landing on an image of my husband's smiling face. "I want to show you these one day," he whispered, his eyes glinting. "Do you remember when you told me you didn't want kids, sweetheart? Well, I can fix that." Something ice cold ran down my spine. Behind him, I could make out my younger self sleeping. He advanced toward me, holding up a syringe. "It's just anesthetic. Don't worry, it won't hurt." I watched my husband slide the needle into my arm, stroking his hands through my hair. "Go to sleep, honey," he whispered. "I'll make our family." He moved toward the camera and grabbed something sharp, a scalpel. "Here he is," he whispered, dangling a plastic bag filled with bloody fluid, a bulging mass weighing it down. I could see the head, the body, arms, and legs. Something sour filled my mouth. He peered at the bag, swinging it around with a laugh. This one is a boy, I think. You're gonna love him, Mara." He straightened my pillow. "I know you said you'd never want them, but I want 5 children from you. Don't worry, Dr. Marks told me exactly what I need to do." I watched my husband slowly cut my stomach open, blood soaking the sheets, and with a wide grin implant the thing Jay. Inside the cavernous hole he sliced into my stomach. Tape 2 was exactly the same. The twins. Tape 3 with my darling Abigail. I ejected it and threw the tape at the wall. I didn't get pregnant. He physically put them inside my fucking stomach. When he returned home, I wore a brave smile for my kids. But they're not my kids. My stomach has been hurting for days. I thought it was food poisoning, but I can't help wondering. My stomach is starting to balloon. I thought it was for sure a food baby. It can't be, right? Not at 50 years old. Oh God, am I pregnant? The New Protein Initiative. Back in 2021, things were so chaotic with the pandemic that a lot of weird stuff got overlooked. Like this USDA inspector in Nebraska who found some unclassified biological matter in what was supposed to be pork trim. The report just got filed away under all those emergency rules, and nobody followed up. I think around then, too, a virologist at the CDC noticed something off in livestock tests. Human albumin traces in beef samples. She said, probably just cross-contamination, but her email trying to ask about it came back undelivered because of some restructuring. It feels like by 2022, people in agriculture started talking more about supply chain resilience in these white papers. Subsidies went to a few startups focused on high-yield protein stuff. Vita Corp got this no-bid deal to fix up old poultry plants with freeze-drying machines. Their patents talk about tenderizing enzymes and keeping myoglobin stable at different pH levels. And oddly, their permits allow for medical waste disposal. Why would that be needed for meat processing? You know, Lauren, my wife in the story, she worked those late shifts checking hospital morgue shipments. She started seeing things not adding up. Bodies marked for cremation would disappear from the logs, then show up again with different codes, and no ash reported. When she wanted to check the records more closely, her access got cut off. That week, her boss left this cooler in the break room, ribs from the USDA, or something as a thank you. They had this metallic taste, kind of off-putting. The news kept it simple for everyone. Stories about ranchers hit by drought, empty lots, and a huge avian flu problem, blaming climate and global trade issues. But behind that, the FDA rushed through GRA approval for biofortified protein isolate. The application was massive, thousands of pages, with one footnote saying the source material skipped regular livestock checks under some public health law. Social media got clamped down hard. This butcher in Ohio went live cutting into prime cut shipment and found what looked like a human bone, a vertebra maybe, account gone in minutes. Reddit posts digging into USDA manifests vanished as misinformation. Even epidemiologists who wrote about prion and ground beef had their paper pulled by the university over data problems. Come 2024, stores had beef limited to 2 pounds of family per month. But the freezers were full of these federal premium blends, all shiny packages, saying 50% more iron, Patriot protein, or whatever. Nutrition facts showed crazy high B12 and zinc levels, not normal at all. At dinner, parents would pause before dishing out the cheap meatloaf made from that stuff. Kids just ate it up, no clue. Ads everywhere pushing a sustainable future on your plate. You look at the oven, timer at 3 minutes. The smell hits you, rich and coppery, almost alive in a way. Outside on the street, a black van sits there idling. You hear the refrigeration humming. It seems like it's waiting for something. SCP-087. Item hashtag SCP-087. Object Class Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-087 is located on the campus of Redacted. The doorway leading to SCP-087 is constructed of reinforced steel with an electro-release lock mechanism. It has been disguised to resemble a janitorial closet consistent with the design of the building. The lock mechanism on the doorknob will not release unless volts are applied in conjunction with counterclockwise rotation of the key. The inside of the door is lined with 6 centimeters of industrial foam padding. Due to the results of the final expiration, see document 087-4, No personnel are permitted access to SCP-087. Description: SCP-087 is an unlit platform staircase. Stairs descend on a 38-degree angle for 13 steps before reaching a semicircular platform of approximately 3 meters in diameter. Descent direction rotates 180 degrees at each platform. The design of SCP-087 limits subjects to a visual range of approximately 1.5 flights. A light source is required for any subject exploring SCP-087, as there are no lighting fixtures or windows present. Lighting sources brighter than 75 watts have shown to be ineffective, as SCP-087 seems to absorb excess light. Subjects report and audio recordings confirm the distressed vocalizations from what is presumed to be a child between the ages of Anne. The source of the distress calls is estimated to be located approximately 200 meters below the initial platform. However, any attempts to descend the staircase have failed to bring subjects closer to the source. The depth of descent calculated from Exploration 4, the longest exploration, is shown to be far beyond both the possible structure of both the building and geological surroundings. At this time, it is unknown if SCP-087 has an endpoint. SCP-087 has undergone 4 video recorded explorations by Class D personnel. Each subject conducting an exploration has encountered SCP-087-1, which appears as a face with no visible pupils, nostrils, or mouth. The nature of SCP-087-1 is entirely unclear, but it has been determined that it is not the source of the pleading. Subjects exhibit feelings of intense paranoia and fear when faced with SCP-087-1, but it is undetermined whether said feelings are abnormal or simply natural reactions. Addendum: over a period of 2 weeks following Exploration 4, several members of the staff and students from the redacted campus reported knocking at a variable rate of 1 to 2 seconds per knock coming from the interior of SCP-087. The door leading to SCP-087 has been fitted with 6-centimeter thick industrial padding. All reports of knocking have ceased. Authorized personnel may refer to documents 087, I through 087-4 for transcripts of explorations I-4. Document #087, I, Exploration I, D. 8432 is a 43-year-old Caucasian male of average build and appearance and unremarkable psychological background. Class D designation is a result of demotion due to mishandling SCP. D. 8432 is equipped with 75-watt flood lamp with battery power capable of lasting 24 hours, a handheld camcorder fitted with a transmission stream, and an audio headset for communication with Dr. Acontrol. D. 8432 steps through doorway onto the initial platform. Despite the wattage, the flood lamp only illuminates the first 9 steps. The second platform is not visible. D-8432, it's fucking dark. Doctor, is your flood lamp functioning properly? D-8432 shines the light out the door and into the academic building's hallway. The light reaches significantly further. D-8432, yeah, it's working. It just won't light these stairs all the way down. Doctor, thank you. Please continue. D-8432 descend for 13 steps before reaching the second platform. The platform is in the shape of a semicircle with an apparently concrete surface and walls. There are no distinct markings, aside from nondescript patches of dust, dirt, or were consistent with that which is found in a typical concrete stairwell. D-8432 rotates 180 degrees to begin descent down the second flight, then pauses. Doctor, reason for stopping? D-8432, you hear that? There's a fucking kid down there. Sounds like one. None of the described audio is feeding through the camera or mic at this time. Doctor, could you please describe the sound? D-8432, it's young. Either female or a very young boy. It's crying and sobbing and saying, pause, please pause, help pause, please pause. Yeah, it keeps repeating that and crying. Doctor, can you estimate its distance from your current location? D-8432. I don't know. Maybe 200 meters down? Doctor, please continue down the next flight. The subject descends another 13 steps. As he reaches the landing, audio of the child is described as picked up The child alternates between sobbing, wailing, and the words, please, help, and down here. The level of audio is consistent with D-8432's report of it being approximately 200 meters below. Doctor, can you still hear the crying? D-8432. Yeah. Doctor, we're picking it up as well. Please continue down. Stop if you notice any changes in the audio or environment. The subject ascends another 3 flights of stairs before stopping. D-8432, keep going? Doctor, please. D-8432 continues another 17 flights, total of 22 flights, before stopping. There are no visual changes in the environment, and each flight is in a consistent 13 steps. D-8432, I'm not getting any fucking closer to the kid. Stereo audio confirms that the crying noise has not increased in volume and remains approximately 200 meters below the subject. Doctor, noted. Please continue. The subject continues another 28 flights before stopping. 50 flights total. D-8432 is standing on the 51st landing, counting the initial ground level landing. D-8432 is estimated to be 200 meters below the initial platform. 34 minutes have elapsed. The volume of the crying has not increased. D-8432, I feel a little uneasy. Doctor, you spent a long time in a dark, unknown stairwell. It's natural. Please continue. The subject hesitates before stepping down on the next stair. As the subject moves forward, the flood lamp illuminates a face located approximately at the bottom of the flight, SCP-087-1. It appears to be the same size and shape as a human head, except it is lacking a mouth, nostrils, and pupils. The face is completely motionless, but is making direct eye contact, indicating its awareness of D-8432. D-8432. Yelling fuck? What the fuck is that? Shit. Holy fucking shit. What the fuck? Doctor, can you please describe what you see? D-8432. It's some sort of fucking person face thing. And it's fucking looking right at me. Fuck. It's looking right at me. Doctor, is it moving? D-8432. Pause. Heavy breathing. No. It's just staring at me. Fuck, it's creepy. Doctor, please approach and further illuminate the entity. D-8432. Fuck. I don't want to fucking. The face jerks forward about 50 centimeters directly toward D-8432. D-8432. Yelling fuck. Redacted. D-8432 enters a panic state and rapidly ascends SCP-087. D-8432 reaches the ground floor in 18 minutes, at which time he collapses and passes out. There is no sign of SCP-087-1. Review of the footage indicates an equal number of flights and steps ascending as descending. Audio of the crying and pleading remains at the same volume until the last flight, at which point it ceases. Medical reports indicate collapse was a result of the rapid ascension of the stairs, causing fatigue. Document #087-2, Exploration 2. D-9035 is a 28-year-old African-American male of strong build. Psychological background indicates no abnormalities, except an extreme hatred for women. Subject has an extensive record of data expunged. D-9035 is equipped with a 100-watt flood lamp with battery power, capable of lasting 24 hours, a handheld camcorder fitted with a transmission stream, and an audio headset for communication with Dr. at control. D-9035 is also equipped with a backpack containing 100 small LED lights with adhesive backs and battery lives of approximately 3 weeks. Lights turn on and off by compressing them. D-9035 shines a flood lamp down the first flight of stairs. Despite the extra wattage, the light does not illuminate beyond the 9th step. D-9035. You want me to go down there, Doc? Doctor, please shine your flood lamp outside of SCP-087 to verify it is functioning properly. D-9035 shines the light into the hallway. Comparison with the footage from Exploration, I confirms it is indeed brighter. Doctor, thank you. Please continue to the first landing. D-9035. Hey, Doc, I know what you said and all, but I don't think I want to go there. Doctor, please continue to the first landing. D-9035. Doc, look, Doctor, interrupting. As per our earlier conversation, please continue to the first landing. D. 9035 pauses for 18 seconds, then descends 13 steps to the first landing and stops. D. 9035. Is that a kid? Doctor, please remove one of the adhesive lights and affix it to the wall on the landing. D. 9035. Doc, you hear that? Is that a kid down there? Doctor, that's unconfirmed. Please affix an adhesive light to the wall and verify it functions. D. 9035 hesitates, then removes one of the lights from his backpack and adheres it to the wall. He presses on the light, and it turns on. Doctor, please turn off your flood lamp. D. 9035 hesitates again before turning off the lamp. The LED light illuminates the landing, but does not extend beyond the first step either way. Doctor, thank you. You may turn your flood lamp back on. Please continue to descend. At each landing, affix an LED light to the wall and turn it on. If you notice anything unusual, please report it. D. 9035 turns the flood lamp back on, then descends the next flight of stairs. As he sets foot on the landing, the audio picks up sounds of pleading and crying, consistent with those of the first exploration. Doctor, can you still hear the previously reported audio? D. 9035. Yeah, she sounds, about 150, maybe 200 meters down. Am I supposed to get her? Look, document. I don't do good with kids. Doctor, please place a light and continue down until you notice anything unusual. The subject adheres the light to the wall and turns it on, then continues to the next landing. He adheres the third LED light to the wall and turns it on. D. 9035 continues in this manner for the next 25 flights before stopping. D. 9035. I don't think I'm getting any closer to the kid, Doc. Doctor, how far below would you estimate the source of the sound to be? D. 9035. Same as before. 150 to 200 meters down. Doctor, thank you. Please proceed. D. 9035 continues in the same fashion for the next 24 flights. At the 51st landing, he stops. Footage shows an arc gouge in the concrete wall, estimated to be approximately 50 centimeters long and 10 centimeters wide. The first step down from the landing appears to be completely smashed into rubble. D. 9035, you see that? Doctor, yes. Can you please describe what you see? D. 9035. Looks like something slashed at the wall, and the step over here is all crumbled up and stuff. The slash mark looks really smooth. D. 9035 touches the gouge mark. D. 9035. Yeah, it's smooth. Feels like glass. Doctor, thank you. Please continue down. D. 9035. Look, document. I think I've gone far enough. Doctor, please continue as per our agreement. D. 9035. I don't want to be doing this, agreement or not. Data expunged. D. 9035 steps over the destroyed step and continues down the staircase. Nothing is notable at the next landing. D. 9035 adheres an LED light to the wall and continues in the same fashion for another 38 flights. The sound of the crying and pleading still has not gotten closer. D. 9035 is on the 89th landing and 74 minutes have elapsed from the beginning of the exploration. Subject is estimated to be 350 meters below the initial platform. D. 9035. I feel like the kid's just trying to lure me down here, document. I think it's time for me to... D. 9035 stops talking and moving as a flood lamp illuminates SCP-087-1. The face is staring directly at D. 9035, again indicating awareness of the subject's presence. Although SCP-087-1 appears to be unmoving, its location is 38 flights below the initial encounter in Exploration Eye, indicating it is mobile. Doctor, is there a reason you stopped? D. 9035, unresponsive. D. 9035's breathing grows labored. SCP-087-1 remains immobile for an additional 13 seconds. SCP-087-1 blinks. D. 9035, yelling incomprehensible. SCP-087-1 jerks forward until it is approximately 90 centimeters from D. 9035. Subject turns and flees up the stairs. Doctor, please relax and calm down. Turn around. We need a closer look at the face. D. 9035 ignores Doctor and continues rapid ascent. He continues to scream incomprehensibly. Doctor, D. 9035, can you hear me? Please slow down. D. 9035 is unresponsive and continues rapidly climbing the stairs. His screaming diminishes to babbling. After ascending 72 flights, D. 9035 collapses on the 17th landing. Doctor, D. 9035, can you hear me? D. 9035 is unresponsive, but labored breathing can be heard through the audio feed. For the next 14 minutes, D. 9035 is immobile. The visual feed is black, and audio picks up only the subject's breathing and the continuous pleading coming from below. After 14 minutes and 32 seconds of unchanging visual and audio feeds, the sound of a rapid heartbeat not consistent with a human heartbeat and a low cracking noise is heard. 7 seconds later, D. 9035 gasps and revives, continuing his ascent of the stairs rapidly and wordlessly. The heartbeat and cracking cease, and nothing abnormal is detected on the visual feed. He remains unresponsive. D. 9035 exits SCP-087 and sits on the floor outside of the entrance. D. 9035 then enters a catatonic state from which he is document number 0873, expiration 3. D. 9884 is a 23-year-old female of average build and appearance. Psychological background indicates a history of depression. Subject has a minimal record of using excessive force to data expunged. D. 9884 is equipped with a 75-watt flood lamp with battery power, capable of lasting 24 hours, a handheld camcorder fitted with a transmission stream, and an audio headset for communication with Doctor at control. D. 9884 is also equipped with a backpack containing 3.75 liters of water, 15 nutrient bars, and 1 thermal blanket. D. 9884 stands on the ground level landing of SCP-087. The flood lamp illuminates only the first 9 steps. LED lights placed on the wall during the last exploration are not visible. Doctor, please descend first flight and examine the landing wall. D. 9884 descends 13 steps and stops at the landing. There is no trace of the LED light at the location footage from exploration to indicate it was placed. D. 9884, yeah, it's just a dirty concrete wall. There's like nothing on it. No, wait, it's a little bit sticky right here. D. 9884 indicates the spot on the wall the LED light should have been located. D. 9884, there's a child crying down there. She's begging for help and crying. Doctor, thank you. Please continue down the steps until you notice anything unusual. D. 9884 descends. Upon reaching the next landing, audio of the crying child consistent with the prior 2 explorations is picked up. No LED lights appear to be present on any of the landing walls. D. 9884 continues with no incident until she reaches the 17th landing. D. 9884, there's something on the ground here and it smells really bad. It's all sticky and stuck on my shoe. Ugh, it's so gross. Video feed confirms presence of substance occupying a space approximately 50 centimeters in diameter. Doctor, can you describe the scent? D. 9884. It kind of smells like old rusty metal and pee. Doctor, thank you. Please continue until you notice anything else. D. 9884 continues to the 51st landing without incident. The 51st landing remains unchanged from a previous expedition, and similar observations are made. D. 9884 is asked again to descend until anything unusual is noticed. Subject continues her descent until the 89th landing is reached. The video feed jerks and the subject yells. D. 9884. Ah, fuck. There's a hole in the ground, and I almost fell in. Video feed confirms the presence of a hole approximately 1 meter in diameter. The subject shines a floodlight down, revealing only blackness. Approximately 4 seconds pass, and a light of an indeterminate distance down the hole flicks on for approximately 2 seconds and then back off. D. 9884. There was a light down there. It's gone now, but it was on for like a second. Did you see it? Doctor, yes. Can you estimate the depth of this hole? D9884. No way. It's too deep. At least a kilometer. Like, way more than a kilometer. Doctor, thank you. Can you still hear the sound of the child? D9884. Uh-huh. She still sounds far away. I don't feel like I'm getting any closer. It's like for every step I take, she takes one down. Doctor, please continue down until you encounter anything unusual. D9884 continues to descend SCP-087 for approximately an hour, covering an additional 164 flights. She stops to rest on the 253rd landing, consuming one nutrient bar and several gulps of water. D9884 is an estimated 1.1 kilometers below the initial landing, yet the sound of the child has not changed in volume. After pausing for 4 minutes, D9884 resumes her descent, making no stops for another 216 flights, 1.5 hours later. D9884 is on the 469th landing, an approximate 1.8 kilometers below the ground level. D9884, I'm not getting anywhere. I think it's time I went back. I mean, going down is one thing, but this is a long climb back. Doctor, you've been provided with food, water, and blankets to last you 24 hours. Please continue down. D9884, no, I think I'm going to go back up. D9884 turns toward the previous flight of stairs. D9884, aye, screams. SCP-087-1. The face is directly behind D9884, blocking her ascent. The face appears approximately 30 centimeters from the lens of the camera. Its eyes are fixed directly on the lens, this time looking not at the subject, but the person viewing the video feed. The video feed glitches and freezes for 4 seconds, accompanied by a static-like screeching noise from the audio feed. It then cuts to bumpy visuals of D9884, descending the stairs rapidly. D9884, panicked and hysterical, it's been following me. This whole time it's been right behind me. Oh God, it's right behind me. It was looking right at me. Doctor, please do something, please help me. Oh God. No, please get away. Please, no, please. I knew it was following me. Help make it leave, please. No, it was looking at me. It was staring at me. It knew I was here. It's been watching me this whole time. Oh God, please help me. No, please. This continues in a similar fashion until the end. D9884 continues to scream and plead hysterically as she rapidly descends the staircase. The previously heard static-like screeching seems to overlay the audio feed, beneath which can still be heard the original sound of the crying child. Approximately 14 flights down, the video feed swings to show the area directly behind D9884. The face is now approximately 20 centimeters from a camera lens. It is not staring at the subject. Rather, it is fixated on a camera lens, giving the illusion it is making eye contact with those viewing the footage. It is important to note that since the sighting of SCP-087-1, the sound of the girl crying and pleading has been increasing in volume, indicating D9884 is nearing the source. After an approximate 150 panic flights of descent with 3 visual confirmations of SCP-087-1 still in pursuit, D9884 trips and appears to fall unconscious. Audio feed indicates strong proximity to the source of the crying. The static and screeching noise continue. Video feed shows yet another descending flight of stairs, indicating D9884 still has not reached the base of the stairwell. 12 seconds of motionlessness pass before the face comes in full view of the camera, eye contact being made directly with the viewer. Audio and video feeds cut out, and no connection is reestablished. SCP-096. Item hashtag SCP-096. Object Class Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-096 is to be contained in its cell, a 5mx5mx5m airtight steel cube, at all times. Weekly checks for any cracks or holes are mandatory. There are to be absolutely no video surveillance or optical tools of any kind inside SCP-096 cell. Security personnel will use pre-installed pressure sensors and laser detectors to ensure SCP-096 presence inside the cell. Any and all photos, video, or recordings of SCP-096 likeness are strictly forbidden without approval from Doctor and O5. Description: SCP-096 is a humanoid creature measuring approximately 2.38 meters in height. Subject shows very little muscle mass, with preliminary analysis of body mass suggesting mild malnutrition. Arms are grossly out of proportion with the rest of the subject's body, with an approximate length of 1.5 meters each. Skin is mostly devoid of pigmentation, with no sign of any body hair. SCP-096 jaw can open 4 times the norm of an average human. Other facial features remain similar to an average human, with the exception of the eyes, which are also devoid of pigmentation. It is not yet known whether SCP-096 is blind or not. It shows no signs of any higher brain function, and is not considered to be sapient. SCP-096 is normally extremely docile, with pressure sensors inside its cell indicating it spends most of the day pacing by the eastern wall. However, when someone views SCP-096's face, whether it be directly, via video recording, or even a photograph, it will enter a stage of considerable emotional distress. SCP-096 will cover its face with its hands and begin screaming, crying, and babbling incoherently. Approximately 1 to 2 minutes after first viewing, SCP-096 will begin running to the person who viewed its face, who will from this point on be referred to as SCP-096-1. Documented speeds have varied from 35 km/h to km/h, and seems to depend on distance from SCP-096-1. At this point, no known material or method can impede SCP-096 progress. The actual position of SCP-096-1 does not seem to affect SCP-096 response. It seems to have an innate sense of SCP-096-1's location. Note: this reaction does not occur when viewing artistic depictions. See document 096-1. Upon arriving at SCP-096-1's location, SCP-096 will proceed to kill and data expunge SCP-096-1. 100% of cases have left no traces of SCP-096-1. SCP-096 will then sit down for several minutes before regaining its composure and becoming docile once again. It will then attempt to make its way back to its natural habitat. Data redacted due to the possibility of a mass chain reaction, including breach of Foundation secrecy and large civilian loss of life. Retrieval of subjects should be considered alpha priority. Doctor has also petitioned for immediate termination of SCP-096. See Interview 096-1. Order is awaiting approval. Termination order has been approved and is to be carried out by Doctor on data redacted. See Incident 096-1A. Audio log from Interview 096-1. Interviewer: Doctor. Interviewed: Captain Rhett, former commander of Retrieval Team Zulu 9A. Retrieval Incident # 096-1A. Begin log. Time: research area. Captain, it always sucks as to get initial retrieval duty. You have no idea what the damn thing is capable of besides what jacked up information the field techies can scrape up, and you're lucky if they even tell you the whole story. They told us to bag and tag. Didn't tell us Jack's hit about not looking at the damn thing. Doctor, could you describe the mission, please? Captain, yeah, sorry. We had 2 choppers, one with my team and one on backup with Zulu 9B and Doctor. We spotted the target about 2 clicks north of our patrol path. I'm guessing he wasn't facing our direction, else he would have taken us out then and there. Doctor, your report says SCP-096 didn't react to the cold? It was OC. Captain, actually it was... And yes, it was but naked and didn't so much as shiver. Anyway, we landed, approached the target, and Corporal got ready to bag it. That's when Doctor called. I turned to answer it, and that's what saved me. The target must have turned, and my whole squad saw it. Doctor, that's when SCP-096 entered an agitated emotional state. Captain, yep. Interviewed now pauses for a second before continuing. Sorry. Got the willies for a second. Doctor, that's all right. Captain, yeah. Well, I never saw its face. My squad did, and they paid for up the ass. Doctor, could you describe it a little more, please? Captain pauses. Yeah. It started screaming at us and crying. Not animal roaring, though. Sounded exactly like a person. Really fucking creepy. Pauses again. We started firing when it picked up Corporal and ripped off his leg. God. He was screaming for our help. Anyway, we were blowing chunks out of target, round after round. Didn't do jack shit. I almost lost it when it started. Data, expunge him. Doctor, that's when you ordered the use of an papers are heard moving at for ADD launcher? Captain, an anti-tank gun. Started carrying it ever since SCP got loose. I've seen those tear through tanks like tissue paper. Did the same thing to the target. Doctor, there was significant damage to SCP-096? Captain, it didn't even fucking flinch. It kept tearing apart my squad, but with half of his torso gone. He draws a large half circle across his torso. Doctor, but it was taking damage? Captain, if it wasn't showing it. It must have lost all its organs, all its blood, but it didn't acknowledge any of it. Its bone structure wasn't hurt at all, though. It kept tearing my squad apart. Doctor, so no actual structural damage. How many rounds would you say were fired at SCP-096? Captain, at the least? 1,000. Our door gonna kept his GAU. 19 on it for at least 20 seconds. 20 fucking seconds. That's 600.50 caliber rounds pumped into the thing. Might as well been spitting at it. Doctor, this is when Zulu 9B arrived? Captain, yeah, and my squad was gone. Zulu 9B managed to get the bag over its head, and it just sat down. We got into the chopper and got it here. I don't know how I never saw its face. Maybe God or Buddha or whoever thought I should live. The jackass. Doctor, we have obtained an artist depiction of SCP-096 face. Would you like to view it? Captain pauses, after hearing that thing screams and the screams of my men. I don't think I want to put a face to what I heard. No. Just no. Doctor, all right. I believe we're done here. Thank you, Captain. Chairs are heard moving and footsteps leave the room. Captain Rhett is confirmed to have left interview room 22. Doctor, let this be on record that I am formally requesting SCP-096 be terminated as soon as possible. And log SCP-173. Item hashtag SCP-173. Object Class Euclid. Special Containment Procedures. Item SCP-173 is to be kept in a locked container at all times. When personnel must enter SCP-173's container, no fewer than May 3rd enter at any time, and the door is to be relocked behind them at all times. 2 persons must maintain direct eye contact with SCP-173 until all personnel have vacated and relocked the container. Description: moved to Site 1993. Origin is as of yet unknown. It is constructed from concrete and rebar with traces of Krylon brand spray paint. SCP-173 is animate and extremely hostile. The object cannot move while within a direct line of sight. Line of sight must not be broken at any time with SCP-173. Personnel assigned to enter container are instructed to alert one another before blinking. Object is reported to attack by snapping the neck at the base of the skull or by strangulation. In the event of an attack, personnel are to observe Class 4 hazardous object containment procedures. Personnel report sounds of scraping stone originating from within the container when no one is present inside. This is considered normal, and any change in this behavior should be reported to the acting HMCL supervisor on duty. The reddish-brown substance on the floor is a combination of feces and blood. Origin of these materials is unknown. The enclosure must be cleaned on a bi-weekly basis.
The radio signal seems to be getting weaker.
The deer don't like me. They've been staring at me. For context, I live in a small town in West Virginia. Old coal town with like 1,000 people in it. I'm fortunate in that I have some money after working in tech for a while, so I can live comfortably when others are struggling. So I have a fairly decent house on the outskirts of town where I live with my wife. The woods around us are gorgeous. We honestly chose this place for the natural beauty in the hills. It's quiet here, almost too quiet, which is what we were looking for after spending years in San Fran. A little place for us to enjoy some peace. I mean, our closest neighbor is like a half-mile away. Jason, great guy, or he was at least. I was sitting on my back porch the other night with her, and we were enjoying some beer and conversation. We have a little end-of-day routine at this point, and that's when I first heard it. It was this, like, sound. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's like a grinding, whining sound, or a hum, kind of both. It came from deep in the woods and sounded quite distant. She and I joked it was aliens, and didn't think much of it, honestly. I mean, weird things happen in the woods sometimes. So we sat on our rocking chairs and sipped our beers and just listened for a while. After maybe 30 minutes, it stopped, and that was that. We went in, went to bed, and called it quits for the day. All was quiet for a while after that. About a week goes by, and things are normal. But one night, as I'm coming back from the store to do our little porch thing, I hear it again. That grinding whimper of a hum. Obviously, I looked back to the woods, but just couldn't see anything but one of the deer that roamed the area. He looked at me and scurried off, and I went inside. I got back into my truck, so fast, and tried turning the engine over. But I guess my stunt with the gate fucked the motor up real bad. I managed to get it to start, and just barely peeled out of there with my wits. But halfway home it crapped out on me, and now we're here. It's getting dark, I'm in the woods, and I have one shotgun shell left. I tried calling Jason, but I have no signal yet again. I'm crying. There's no way I'm walking back at night. And I can hear the humming whine growing louder as the sun continues to set. I can see them. Deer eyes in the trees. They're staring at me. I think they're waiting. I don't know what else to do, but I have one shotgun shell and I'm going to make it count. I'm scared, but I'm not going down like that. The deer will not get me. I'm writing this to warn people. When someone says the deer don't like you, don't stick around to find out why. Please, I implore you, because these aren't deer, and they do not like me. They just blinked at me. I'm making this shell count. I recall telling my wife that I'd heard it again, and she said something to the effect of, maybe it's old mining machinery. I asked what she meant, and she said, well, they used to mine for coal in the area. There are tons of mines around. Maybe something's going on with the machines they use. She's not wrong. There are plenty of old coal mines in the area. Not that I knew much about that, but I knew who would. Remember Jason? The guy has lived here his whole life, and I had his number, so I gave him a ring on my cell phone. I couldn't get through to him. Service was down. I guess it happens sometimes, but I got this weird, crawling feeling in my stomach. So I told my wife I was going to go pay him a visit, and she said she'd keep the beer cold for me. I loaded up into my little truck and headed down his way. Now Jason is this big, burly mountain of a man, and his wife is a skinny little woman who is always by his side. But when I got to the dirt driveway to his house, I was stopped by headlights. He stopped the car and got out. I did the same. What's up? I asked him. It's kind of late to be going out, right? And he just kind of stares at me and shakes his head. You hear that? I assumed he was talking about his mom. So, I told him yeah and asked what was in response. He points out into the woods, at a deer that's staring right at us. The moment we lock eyes with it darts off. I thought it was whatever. But Jason seemed to think otherwise. Ain't normal, he said. What's not normal? And he spits and goes. Deer, they ain't acting right. What? You think the noise is spooky? I thought he'd say yes, but he just kind of stared out into the woods again, where the deer used to be. After a moment, he looked back at me and said, the deer don't do that. Stare. He nods. They don't stare like that. I have no idea what he's talking about. So I kind of shot him this look of confusion, but before I could ask for clarity, he tells me, you'd best go home. Why? 'Cause deer don't stare like that. Okay, I figured I'd best leave him alone. He didn't seem right to me. So I turned around and left, went home, and cracked open a beer with my wife. I told her what he said, and she said, well, I have noticed more deer lately. and they are just kind of staring. I asked what she meant. I was in town yesterday and saw 2 deer staring at me out the corner of my eye, and when I looked at them, they just kind of scurried off. Well, I didn't know what to say to that, so we went to bed after a while of silence. Save for the hum, of course, that stopped around 10 p.m. The next day, I woke up and went downstairs to get some coffee started. I was incredibly groggy, as I usually am, and so I didn't notice at first, but, well, I felt this sinking feeling of being watched, and out the corner of my eye, I saw a deer staring through my kitchen window directly at me. The moment I looked in its eyes, I knew something was wrong. I was watching me like it was thinking, and as soon as I realized that, I got this chill that made me shiver, like I wasn't really looking at an animal at all, and then it just ran off. Fuck the coffee. I grabbed my keys and wallet and loaded up and headed to Jason's house immediately. I straight up pounded on the door at like 8 in the morning, and when he answered, he had this look in his eyes, this tired, weary look. Red eyes, dark circles, some sense of exhaustion. He ushered me in quickly. What the hell is going on? I asked, and he brings me into his kitchen and tells me, the deer ain't right. That's when I notice he's got a shotgun on the counter, and one by the door, and a 9mm on his hip. What does that mean? And he shakes his head and says, you and your wife should get out of here. The deer don't like you. Who cares if deer don't like whatever? I said, they're just deer. Nodding, he kind of chews his lip then says, yeah, well, that noise ain't just a noise. I get this feeling that he's super cagey, and I just feel this deep discomfort wash over me, like I was unwelcome. This from a man who has been nothing but kind to my wife and I. So it was really noticeable. All right, well, I'll go ahead and leave then. I tell him, but he puts his hand on my arm as I go to leave. Not without this, you ain't. And he hands me the shotgun on the counter. He also gives me 2 shells, just 2. Now go on. I don't tell my wife about it all day. But Kay that evening, when we're on the back porch listening to the hum again, I spill it all to her. The deer, the warning Jason gave me, the shotgun, and she stares at me dumbfounded. But before she can speak, I see another fucking deer in the woods out back, just staring at me. It's not moving. It's hardly even breathing. It's just staring at us. And in the porch glow that's reflected in his eyes, I can just see something human, or at least intelligent. I don't know how to describe it otherwise, but where they'd usually run off when I spot them, this one just kept staring, and staring, and staring. I look at my wife, who is staring back. What's wrong with it? She asked me. I'm not sure, but I don't like it. We head inside, and I grab the shotgun, deciding that I've had enough, and I head back out. And now there are 2 deer there, without fear of light from my porch, staring. Hell no, thinks I. So I cocked the gun and fired at them. I swear I hit one square in the body. It should have just killed over then and there, but it didn't, and instead it just runs off, like the shrapnel just went right through it. I ran after a bit and toward the source of the hum, just a ways. But I didn't see any marks in the trees or anything. I know I hit that deer. No blood or anything. So I run back inside. Something is wrong now. This much I know. But when I come back in, my wife is at the front window calling me over. Honey, she says, there are more deer out front. I rush up to look, and sure enough, there are 3 deer out there staring directly at us. And I don't know if I'm imaging it, but I swear I saw one mouth the word Sean. My name is Sean. We lock all the doors and head up to the bedroom, where we barricade ourselves in using an old trunk in the foot of our bed. Out the window, I can see more deer gathering outside. They're all staring directly up at us. The hum is getting louder too. I tell my wife we should take turns sleeping, and she agrees. And we decide to GTFO in the morning. She sleeps first. The deer stay there all night. Around 1 a.m., I wake her up to switch off. We do, and I fall asleep, but I wake up again at like 3, and she's gone. The door is open, and she's gone. But in the crack of the door, a fucking deer is staring at me with those human eyes. I screamed. I screamed like I've never screamed before. That seemed to scare it off, and I jumped out of bed and flipped all the lights on. I called out for my wife, and got nothing back. The hum stopped. Everything got quiet, and I felt more alone than I ever have in my life. alone and afraid. I stay up until the sun rises, and I start looking for my wife. We're on to today at this point. I try to call Jason again, and this time I have service. My wife is gone. I cry to him when he picks up, and he literally just says, "Deer don't like you," and hangs up. Now I'm alone in my house, and I have to find my wife. Our truck is still there, so she couldn't have gone far. So I load up and head to where the hum is coming from. I don't know what else to do. After like 30 minutes of rough, rocky dirt road, I find, sure enough, an old mine surrounded by a rusted wire fence. It's mostly quiet here, but somewhere deep, somewhere obscure, I can hear it. That grinding hum, like mechanical gears crying out for oil. The fence is sturdy, but the front of my truck is sturdier. I rammed that thing at full force and ended up on a hillside mine with old wooden shafts and conveyors that probably haven't been used since the 60s. Fuck the truck up there. I grabbed a shotgun from the seat, one shell left, feeling powerless and scared shitless. "Honey," I called. Nothing but the hum deep inside the earth. I searched the whole place, top to bottom, before finding the entrance to the mine itself. And I could hear it, that awful noise deep inside. "Honey," it echoed off the walls, bouncing side and through. And in that moment, the hum stopped, just completely stopped. I stared into the mine shaft, standing before the open metal doors, one round in chamber, and then I see them, the eyes of deer. Not one, not two, but dozens of deer, all blinking into existence inside of the darkness within. The one in front, though I couldn't see its body, well, I know what my wife's eyes look like. I screamed. I ran and I screamed. My neighbor used to peek at me over her fence when I was little. Her fence is 10 foot tall. I didn't realize my new customer used to be my neighbor until I pulled into her driveway. The street name had sounded vaguely familiar when I first read it. A few landmarks on the drive over it sparked something in me. Nothing solid though, just a prickling sense of recognition I couldn't place. It only clicked when I actually saw my old childhood home sitting right beside my customer's property. I know it's strange that it took me that long, that I hadn't recognized anything when I put the address into Google Maps. But my uncle moved me out of this quiet neighborhood when I was 6. I barely remembered anything about living on this street or in that house. My girlfriend, Ellie, said that wasn't quite normal, told me gently that it was probably my brain blocking things out on purpose. I sat gripping the steering wheel long after I'd parked, staring at my childhood home. It backed onto a large woodland area, tall trees looming far above the roof. The bungalow itself looked abandoned, shattered windows, empty bottles scattered across dead yellow grass. Clearly no one had lived there in a long time. A heavy pressure settled in my chest. For a moment, I considered leaving, but I'd only started my lawn mowing business a few months ago. I needed the money. This woman was only my 3rd customer so far. She hadn't called like the others. She emailed instead. "Am interested in your service. Every week Sunday work." I replied that Sundays were fine and asked for the address. She sent it, followed by another message. "Door left open Sundays. Money on table. Help self to drink and meal." It struck me as odd that she'd contacted someone who lived an hour away instead of a local business, but she'd promised a generous tip. Still sitting in the van, I tried to remember my old neighbor. Elderly, maybe. The emails felt that way. But when I searched my memory for a face, I came up blank. Just another thing lost in my strange childhood amnesia. Her lawn was wildly overgrown. Knee-high grass, thick and uneven. The house itself was perfectly normal. A neat 2-story place with a front porch. Well kept enough that the state of the yard felt odd, almost like a choice. I hesitated, wondering if I should knock or just start the job. In the end, I got to work. Part of me didn't want to meet her yet. I was delaying it. I couldn't explain why. As I mowed, my gaze kept drifting to the fence separating her property from my old home. It was enormous, easily 10 feet tall. I couldn't believe something like that had been proved in a quiet suburban street. But it wasn't just the size. Every time I looked at it, the pressure built behind my eyes. The sensation of memory forcing its way up, while something inside me resisted just as hard. effort made my head drop. Then, for a split second, I remembered hair. Long, black strands spilling down the fence from the other side. Tangled and thin, draped over the timber, clinging to the wood, hanging there like a ragged curtain. I'd frozen on my cheap plastic dresser. One of the back wheels was missing, so I had to balance my weight just right to keep it upright. It's strange, the useless little details that scramble back when everything else is lost. The hair shifted, and slowly, above the lip of the fence, the pale forehead rose. There were eyes, white and cloudy. I only saw them for a moment, but I knew immediately who they were peeking down at. Me, only me. Then there had been a sound behind me. Maybe a voice, maybe someone calling my name. The eyes vanished. The forehead sank out of sight. The hair slid upward, strand by strand, slithering back over the fence until there was nothing left on. Cold washed through my body. I tightened my grip on the mower handle and focused on the lines of grass ahead of me. I didn't look at the fence again. Surely it had just been my imagination. Something I'd invented out of boredom. No one could peer over a 10-foot tall fence unless they were standing on stilts or balancing on some ridiculous ladder. And even then, why would anyone climb that high just to look at a child playing in their backyard? It was too strange to take seriously, too absurd. And yet, an unease bloomed low in my chest and refused to settle. Because that image, hair spilling in the fence, eyes watching, was suddenly one of the clearest memories I had from that house. From that time, clearer than anything else I could recall. In over a decade, I shook my head, forced the image away, and got back to work. An hour later, the lawn looked respectable again. I packed my equipment back into my uncle's van. Then I remembered the money. I knocked on the front door and waited a bit. She did say to let myself in, but it felt wrong to just waltz into a stranger's house. I waited another few minutes before finally reaching for the handle and stepping inside. "Ms. Ramona, are you home?" I called out, remembering her name from her email address. One of the first things I noticed was the ceiling. It was unusually high. It made the space feel wide and open, almost cavernous. It also made it incredibly cold inside. Goosebumps rose over my arms. Most of the ground floor was open plan, so I spotted the kitchen right away, where a wooden table sat by the counter. There was money laid out neatly on top of it. Beside it, a glass jug filled with what looked like lemonade, ice cubes floating inside. A clean glass, a sandwich on a plate, she'd said to help myself. Still, I hesitated. I felt silly to be cautious, but I hadn't even met her. I picked up the money and nearly choked when I counted it. 4 $50 notes. I only charged $60. She'd mentioned a tip, sure, but this was excessive. What if she was elderly? What if she'd miscounted? I took 100 and left the other 100 on the table, just in case. That was when I heard something upstairs. A wheeze, wet and uneven, like air being dragged through damaged lungs. After that, 2 sharp creaks snapped through the house in quick succession, floorboards protesting under sudden weight. My body went rigid. Someone was definitely home. I stared at the staircase. "Hello?" My voice rang too loud in the open space. "Ms. Ramona?" No answer. I edged closer to the stairs despite myself, my heart beginning to pound. The noises replayed in my head. What had made them? Had she fallen? Was she hurt? If she was elderly, I told myself I should check. That was the decent thing to do. But another part of me was screaming to leave. The feeling was sudden and absolute, like stepping into a place you were never meant to enter, like bait. After a moment, I turned back to the table. I picked up the sandwich so I wouldn't seem rude, my hands clumsy and shaking, and then I got out. When I drove home, I sat in the van for a long time with the engine off. The sandwich rested on the passenger seat. Eventually, I opened the bread. Inside was butter and raw, red meat. I swallowed, then noticed something else threaded through it. I pinched it between my fingers and pulled. A single hair slid free, dark, absurdly long. I told my girlfriend what happened, but left out the part about my strange memory. Ellie laughed. "You're scared of a little old granny?" "I don't know if she's a granny," I said. "I've never met her before. She could be a man for all I know." Are you sure? You said she was your neighbor. She said, her eyes soft but insistent. That gentle look she always got when she was trying to probe something about my childhood. Are you sure you don't remember anything? That long, black hair entered my mind again. At that moment, I remembered something else. I remembered a single strand had caught in the wind, drifting in the breeze until it detached and floated down to my 6-year-old self. I remembered plucking it from the air and then playing with it carefully so it wouldn't snap. I had wrapped it around my arm, amazed I could coil almost the entire length of my little forearm, like linen around an Egyptian mummy. I shook my head at Ellie's question and told her about the inedible sandwich instead. Ellie laughed again, shaking her head. The poor woman probably has dementia. A week later, I went back. I didn't want to, but Ellie had made me realize I was being ridiculous, and the money mattered. If we ever wanted to move out of my uncle's house, we moved. My stomach churned the whole drive. Before I even started the mower, my eyes were on the fence again. I remembered long, curling fingers reaching over the top, and once more, I remembered seeing half a face peering down at me, just eyes and forehead visible above the timber, watching. I reluctantly went inside to collect my name. This time, she left $300 on the table. Beside it, a note, the handwriting thin and spidery. Take all money. Why no drink? My gaze drifted to the jug of lemonade. I filled a glass, intending to pour half of it down the sink to make it look like I'd had some. Instead, for some reason I couldn't explain, I took a small sip. It was cold, sweet, good. After that, the memories returned, stronger than ever. I had a dream that night. A dream about food being thrown over an enormous fence. Sometimes it was a roast chicken, still warm inside a plastic bag, juices sloshing against the sides. Other times it was a whole chicken, raw, feathers still clinging to pale skin. Sometimes it was fresh fruit in a cracked plastic container. Other times, it was rotting apples in a thick slab of heavy, red meat. I remember the hunger. I remembered setting up a blanket over the bushes beside the fence. A small hidden nest where I could crouch and store what I was given. I remembered eating like an animal, devouring whatever was edible before anyone could find me. I remember my scalp itching constantly. Lice, multiplying, biting, crawling, with no one bothering to stop them. A whole kingdom of parasites living freely in my hair. Then I remember the hand. It slipped through the narrow gap between the fence and the bushes where I sat with my back pressed against the timber, rustling the spindly branches. The hand was enormous, but gentle. One long finger brushed the tangled hair out of my face. The itching faded. I stared up and saw nothing but the endless length of a thin, gray arm disappearing over the fence. I remembered wrapping my small hands around that enormous finger and holding tight, crying into it. Then I remembered an angry voice coming from somewhere. The finger wriggled gently until I released it, and then the hand vanished. The arm withdrew. When I looked back up, only a faint wisp of dark hair was visible above the fence line. Someone tore the blanket away from my hiding place. They yelled, screamed in disgust. I was sitting on a hoard of food. A lot of it was rotting. There were flies. There were maggots. Hands grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the bushes and away from the massive fence. So hard, I thought the bone would snap. Stop. I screamed. The third time I went back to mow Ramona's lawn, I did not hesitate. Something had begun to clarify itself inside me, like an image slowly coming into focus. And I knew I needed to speak to her. Ramona, finally. I didn't know if the memories were wholly real, but pieces were fitting together now, clicking into place with quiet inevitability. I felt closer to the truth than I ever had before, and instead of making my head ache, it planted something determined inside me, something that refused to be quiet any longer. I thought maybe my neighbor had been a sweet old granny who babysat me sometimes. Maybe she fed me. Maybe she took care of me. Maybe she read me stories. Maybe this was the only way my memories were able to return. Disguised as something else, something not quite real, but threaded through the truth. As I started the lawn mower this time, I didn't look away from the fence. I remember the humming, a low, steady hum, as I lay hidden in the bushes beside the fence. The yelling in the house always softened when I listened to her hums. I remembered being lifted so high I could see over the roof of my house. I remembered being placed on a sturdy tree branch in the forest and being given a dead fox. I remembered biting into the furry flesh, feeling warm blood dribble down my cheeks. I remembered sitting in a cocoon of warmth high above the ground, watching the stars blink into existence. I remembered running to my hiding place between the fence and the bushes, shaking, starving, sick with fear. I remembered someone chasing me. "Henry, you get back here right now, you little shit," she screamed. She caught my arm and wrenched me around. "Mummy, stop." I sobbed. "Don't hurt me again." I remembered my mother freezing, and I remembered something brushing the back of my neck, light and familiar, like long strands of hair. My mother gasped, staring at something above us. Terror carved into her face. I looked up, then the fingers came. They wrapped around my mother's body and lifted her. Up, up, up. She was screaming as she went. So I called out, "It's okay, Mummy. She's just taking you to see the stars." There was a deafening crunch, and her screaming stopped. I saw something fly across the sky like a meteor, disappearing into the forest. Hands closed around me. They were so warm and lifted, gentle, careful, cocooning me as I shook and clung to the roof. I rose high enough to see over the roof of my house. Just like all those other times, I finally remembered seeing her face. The image was clear now, unblurred, impossible to look away from. She was pale and gaunt. Her lips stretched too wide across her skull. But her eyes, they were dark, but they were warm. Did Mummy like seeing stars? I asked her. She hummed. My hand shook. I didn't turn the lawnmower off. I walked toward her house on numb legs, the sound of the engine fading into something distant, barely there. The front door was open, as it always was. I climbed the staircase slowly. A low groan echoed from above, stretching and deepening as I went. The upper floor was completely open plan, wide and sloping like an expansive attic. And laid out across, it was a very tall woman. Her skin was a shade close to gray. Her face had the weathered features of someone much older than me. Her limbs were long and spindly. She lay on her side on a soft floor mat that covered nearly every inch of the space, her body folded carefully, purposely, as if she had made herself smaller for me. Her eyes found mine the moment I stepped inside. I dropped to my knees and sobbed before I could stop myself. Terror and grief and everything I had buried for so long rushed to me all at once, crushing and merciless. Fingers reached out, impossibly large, wrapping around me and drawing me gently toward her. I was pulled into warmth, deep and steady, and my shivering slowly began to ease. "You killed her," I sobbed. "You killed her, didn't you?" She hummed softly. "Why? Why did you do that?" I said, the words breaking apart as they left me. She brushed my hair back. My cries thinned into small, broken whimpers. "Why didn't she care about me?" I whispered. "Why did she let me starve? Why did she hurt me? I was just a little kid." Her warmth held. Her breathing stayed slow and even. I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was in a bed. Across from me, seated in an armchair, was a little old lady. Her eyes were distant, as if part of her had wandered somewhere far away and hadn't yet found its way back. Still, they stayed on me, steady and patient. We were still upstairs. The massive mat lay stretched across the floor, unchanged. The bed had been tucked into a small corner of the room, like it had been put there for me. "Who are you?" I asked. "What was that thing?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze drifted to something beside me. I followed it and saw a folded note resting on the mattress. I picked it up with shaking hands. I cursed with sighs and hunger, but I protect. Sweet little boy, cold and hungry, I carry you to the stars, where she not reach. Lost myself when I took her, but she not hurt you anymore. Forgive me, please. When I drove home, I finally asked my uncle to tell me the truth. I'd always known something horrible happened to my mother, but there were details surrounding the event that deep down, I think I never wanted to learn. But I felt stronger now. I was ready. He showed me the pictures first. They were of me as a little boy. My hair was long and scraggly. I wore dirty clothes that were torn at the seams. My body was mapped with bruises and cuts and burn marks. There wasn't much to know, except the fact that my mother was a monster, and when she was found in the woods one day, half-eaten, a case that would quickly be declared as an animal attack. People called it karma after they learned what she did to me. I continued to visit Ramona. I brushed her hair and cared for her when she was a little old granny. I laid down and listened to her hums when she was something else. I wrote all of this down because, unlike my mother, Ramona deserves to be remembered. I could never tell anyone about her. They would have hurt her or killed her, but I needed someone to know. Ramona may have been a beast, but it wasn't her fault. Even when she lost control, it all came down to an instinct to protect. When she was dying, I fell asleep holding her large hand, and when I woke up, there was nothing. She was gone. Even though she doesn't live there anymore, even though the house is no longer occupied, I still go back to mow her lawn. And sometimes when the lawn is done, I linger until the night swallows the sky. When I focus on the constellations, it almost feels like I'm rising slowly above the roof of the house. It's yours, I said as I firmly held the pregnancy test in my right hand. I heard him mutter something under his breath on the other line. Tyler? Yeah. I shook my head. Well, aren't you gonna say anything? Are you sure? His voice cracked. I stare at the pregnancy test, clench in my hand. The positive symbol, clear as day, had burned into my retinas after looking at it for what felt like an eternity. Yes, I'm positive, Tyler. Well, how do you know it's mine? I stood and paced back and forth in my bathroom. I listened to my neighbor above me turn their shower on, tracking the sound of the rushing water as it fell down toward the pipe behind the bathroom mirror. My cheeks began to run hot. What I would have given to have Tyler there with me at that very moment, just so I could see his stupid face. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? He paused. Katie, we only did it once. I leaned my head back and shook my cell phone, my mouth agape as I screamed in utter silence. I slammed the pregnancy test onto the bathroom counter, causing the mirror to rattle. It only takes one time, dumbass. Yeah, but... He paused. I knew exactly where this asshole was going. Still, I felt the need for him to clarify, as if that would somehow make things better. I sat back down on the toilet seat and closed my eyes. The bathroom walls felt like they were caving in. But what? I don't know. Maybe it's not mine? Oh, he did not just say that. I didn't fuck anyone else. He started to mumble something and began to apologize, but I quickly interrupted him before he could finish his bullshit spiel. What the hell do you think I am? You think I'm just some slut you picked up at a bar? Heat flooded through me. My throat tightened. How could I have let someone like him inside me? Every positive thing I had once seen in him had been washed over with disgust and hate. I didn't say that, Katie. I leaned back and tilted my head toward the yellow glow of the bathroom ceiling light, which flickered as a train rushed by outside, blaring its horn. I listened to the water that was running down my bathroom pipes above my head as my neighbor continued to take their shower. I exhaled, slowly shaking my head in disappointment. I wasn't sure what I'd been expecting. After all, I'd only met Tyler a few weeks ago, yet it felt like I had been betrayed by someone I could trust and depend on, someone I had known for years. How could I have been so naive? Something broke inside me. My lips trembled as I spoke. You know what, Tyler? Just forget it. Forget I said anything. I'll deal with it. You and your precious little brain won't have to worry about a goddamn thing. Katie? Tyler began. I ended the call and tossed my phone onto the bathroom counter. I pressed my sweaty palms against my face and let it all out. I sat there for some time, holding myself. Then came the knocking. It was soft at first, barely caught my attention. I wiped my face and quietly left my bathroom. I waited in my living room and listened, glancing first the open window. Its white curtains lifted as a gust of air passed by. I had left it open so that the winter cold could air out my small apartment. I focused on my front door. I doubted I'd heard anything. Still, I decided to check just in case. I walked to the door and looked through its peephole. No one was there in the dimly lit apartment hallway. I brushed it off and sat down on my leather couch. The sound of my phone vibrating on the bathroom counter made my stomach turn. I knew he would be calling back. I had no intention of answering anytime soon. Let him sit on it for a while. Let him think about what he said and what he'd done. On the coffee table in front of me sat a small glass of water and the mifepristone pill from the clinic. My heart beat faster. I had a few friends who'd gotten an abortion before, yet still I wasn't comforted by this fact. I had never taken it before. Another gust of wind blew. Cold air pushed my curtains into the air. The breeze brushed past my face. I shivered. I grabbed the pill and rolled it around in my right hand. I couldn't do this, not with a guy like Tyler. I liked him, but he wasn't even remotely close to father material. Worst of all, I hated children. Hated how much they smelled and how noisy and dirty they could be. I was never meant to be a mother in this life. So why should I make a child suffer? I thought of my sister. What she had said to me about a year ago, one evening during a family gathering. We were at the dinner table. Small sticky fingers grabbed at me. I looked down and saw one of my nieces as she smiled back, wiping her nose. Then another one of her kids, a 7-month-old, threw up next to my dad's dinner plate. My sister looked at me across the table with this exhausted, hollow smile. She then whispered, "You're so lucky you're free, Katie." I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, the pill lying firmly on my palm. I counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. I quickly put the pill into my mouth, grabbed a glass of water, and swallowed. I felt it go down my throat and opened my eyes. There, it was finished. At least for now. There was one more pill that I had to take tomorrow. I shook my head as I stared at the baby carriage by my couch. I then went over and checked the front door to make sure it was shut and locked as I held the phone tightly against my face. "Where did you even find this thing? It looks ancient." "What do you mean?" Tyler said. "I'm not in the mood to play games, dude." "Katie, I'm being serious. What are you talking about? I didn't get you anything." I paused for a moment. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. Tyler was never a good liar, and I could usually hear in the way he spoke. He was telling the truth. It finally dawned on me, something I should have figured out immediately before calling him. How could he have even done this? He lived about 20 minutes away from my place, and he had no idea I was even pregnant until the phone call. After all, we did youth protection. I looked down at the blanket inside of the carriage. I slowly walked over and crouched down next to it. My face was only inches away from the blanket. I could hear Tyler saying something on the other line as I slowly lifted the blanket. I gasped as I stumbled backwards onto the cold hardwood floor. Tyler was yelling for me, asking me if I was okay after hearing me in distress. Inside the white wicker carriage was my pregnancy test. It was impossible. I had left it on the bathroom counter. I quickly got up, ignoring Tyler, and rushed into the bathroom. The pregnancy test I left on the counter was gone. I knew it was the same one, yet still I looked around, hoping it wasn't true. After nearly destroying my organized bathroom, I stumbled out into the living room and stared at the carriage. "Katie, are you okay? Answer me, damn it." I grabbed the phone and held it against my right ear. "How fast can you get here?" "I can be there in a half hour." "Why? What's wrong?" My lips trembled. "Just come, please." The apartment was getting too cold. I had to shut the window, but continued pacing back and forth in the living room, waiting for Tyler to get here and comfort me. I looked down at my phone. 40 minutes had passed. Where the hell was he? I continued biting one of my nails, unable to look away from the carriage. The pregnancy test still lay in its bed. I wanted to erase the thought out of my head, but I knew what I had felt when I lifted that blanket out of the carriage. The blanket was warm to the touch like an animal had been lying in it, and it smelled of vanilla. Tyler failed to answer my fifth call. Enough was enough. I rushed over to the carriage and inspected every inch of it. Maybe whoever was doing this would leave me a clue or something. Was someone punishing me? The only other person I could think of was my mother. She was a very religious woman and had always been against abortions. But even she wouldn't be so cruel. Besides, my parents didn't know about the pregnancy, and I planned to keep it that way. There was nothing else in the carriage besides its little padding. No labels, no notes, nothing. Frustrated, I rolled away from me and stood back up. I jumped and shuddered as another train passed by, blaring its loud, obnoxious horn. My apartment was only 2 blocks away from the train tracks. Each time one would pass by, it would shake my windows and the pictures of my family hanging on the walls. I went over the window to look outside into the cold winter of Maine. The town I lived in was small, but the street was busy. People outside were rushing in and out of stores, covering their faces in freezing gusts of wind. I lay down on the couch and looked at my phone again. Still nothing from Tyler. I pulled up my contact list and scrolled down to my father's number. My thumb carefully hovered over the dial button. I wanted to call him, have him drive all this way from New York. Anything to feel his arms wrapped around me again and give me comfort during all this. I glanced at the carriage. I couldn't. If anything, he would be ecstatic to see the carriage. He had always wanted me to have a family of my own, his own grandson or granddaughter to love. Sadness filled my heart just at the thought of it. I couldn't do that to him. He would never look at me the same if he knew what his favorite daughter had done. Fatigue settled over me as I stared up at the white popcorn ceiling. There were chips of paint all across it. I listened to my neighbors as they walked above me. Every now and then they bickered at each other. I was never able to make out the words, but there were times I wondered if I should say something. By the time the train had finished rolling by, I was already dozing off. I had read that the pill can cause fatigue and dizziness in some people, so I assumed I was one of them, even with that awful thing inside my apartment. I couldn't resist the exhaustion pulling me under as I lay there on my couch. Rain. That was the first thing I heard. It was pouring outside. Winter was gone and the rain and thunderstorm had come in to take over. I shoved myself off the couch to the sound of raindrops inside my apartment. It was dark inside, too dark to see. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. I stumbled forward through the thick night air and looked around for the source. Something was leaking inside my apartment. Outside my window, I saw a flash of lightning, and then the sound of gigantic thunder. Drip, drip, drip. I moved toward the wall behind the TV. My left hand pressed against the gray drywall. The wall was wet and soaked in water. I watched as droplets slowly made their way from the ceiling and climbed their way down the wall. Then near my height, I saw part of the wall push forward slightly. Another strike of lightning and thunder shook my dark apartment. I gently touched the part of the wall that was being pushed toward me. That's when I first heard it. A soft whimper from somewhere inside my apartment wall. I leaned closer to listen and felt the goosebumps crawl up my skin. It was crying louder now, still muffled by the drywall, but it sounded like a newborn crying. Without hesitation, I held my cell phone against my right cheek and shoulder for some light, and quickly dug my fingers into the wet drywall spot, where something was pushing toward me. The newborn continued to cry. "I'm coming!" I yelled frantically as I dug more and more into the wet wall. Chunks of drywall landed on my cold feet. The baby's cry was louder now and clearer than before. I was getting closer. Another round of lightning and thunder roared outside my apartment. I shoved my arm inside the hole I had made. My hand gently swiped around where I couldn't see, hoping to find where exactly the baby was. Without reason, I felt I had to find it. I needed to save it. I pushed further in. Something moved across my knuckles. I stopped and waited for it again. I felt the baby's tiny little fingers grab my right hand's pointing finger and gently grip it. I gasped. Instant relief flashed through me. I smiled and leaned my head against the wall. The baby had stopped crying. It was no longer alone. Now I just needed to get it out of the wall without harming it and figure out where it came from. Did it somehow fall down from the apartment above? Was it hurt? I was about to pull out more wet drywall with my other hand, but that's when I noticed what was above my head, what had replaced my entire ceiling. I looked and saw the storm swirling a few feet above my head. Lightning and thunder now roared inside my apartment. Droplets of rain splashed onto my face. I no longer had a ceiling. It was replaced by storm clouds and what looked like a tornado slowly forming into the center of my room. The baby cried again and gripped my finger harder. I turned and continued pulling out more drywall until I heard something new. "Hi!" The voice came from inside the wall I was tearing down. It didn't sound like a voice I recognized at all. I wouldn't even say it sounded like an adult's voice, not a child, but something was off with the way it sounded, like it was from a bad cartoon character. I froze, unwilling to remove myself from the baby's grip. The storm still swirled above me. My hair and face were soaked in water and bits of drywall. I felt the baby's grip loosen, and then another one replaced it, a hand much larger, and wear what I could only describe as a puffy glove. It pulled me toward the drywall. I tried to remove myself from its grip, but it was too strong. Whatever this was, it was going to pull me inside with it. The baby continued crying again as the other hand tugged. I felt hot cuts digging into my wrist as I pulled back with all my strength. The sound of thunder blared into my eardrums as I continued pulling away from whatever terrible new hell this was. I screamed and begged for it to let me go, but it wouldn't. Instead, it clawed at my wrist and pulled me forward. My right shoulder slammed into the wet drywall. Then came the sound of a loud horn and bright flashing lights blinded my vision as the thing pulled me further in. "Katie!" I screamed and clawed my way forward as I sat up. I struggled to breathe as Tyler knelt down beside me, holding me tightly. I collapsed into him. The storm was gone. "You just had a bad dream," Tyler said as he petted the back of my head. "I'm sorry," I gasped. I thought it was so real. "It's okay, I'm here now," Tyler said. He then kissed my forehead. He looked around the living room, focusing on the TV. "Remodeling, are we?" He grinned. "W what?" I said. I was out of breath when I spoke. Tyler pointed toward the wall behind my TV. The weight of the world shifted beneath my feet. The blood drained from me. Several chunks of drywall were removed from my wall. I thought it was just a dream. How could any of that have been possible? I turned to Tyler as if expecting him to have all the answers. As he knelt there beside me, I couldn't help but wonder if even this was real too. "Tyler, how did you get inside my apartment?" Tyler turned toward me with a look of confusion. "You don't know? I actually thought it was kind of weird, but figured you were just tired and forgot." "Know what?" "Oh well." He pointed toward the front door. "Your front door was left wide open. Come home with me," he said as he stirred the black coffee before handing it down to me. I shook my head. "I don't understand. How is any of this possible? I feel like I'm losing my mind." Tyler sighed as he sat down next to me on the couch. "It's stress. I think between being pregnant and taking the abortion pill, your mind is just exhausted." I took a small sip from the cup. "The dream, maybe, but this..." I pointed toward the carriage. "This is real, Tyler. If it wasn't you then, who the hell would have done this and scared me like that?" Tyler's dark brown eyes moved left to right as he spoke. His hands gently caressed mine. "Look, I know I was being an asshole earlier. I'm sorry, really. I was just in shock, honestly." He then looked down at my hands. "Can I tell you something?" I gently nodded. He took a deep breath and relaxed his shoulders. I'd never seen him so comfortable with me before. It felt nice and warm, something I deeply needed at that very moment. He then cleared his throat before he began, his hands never leaving mine. "A few years ago, back when I was living in a small town in the outskirts of Maine, I met a man at this god-awful bar." Tyler laughed at himself. There wasn't much to do in that small town, and we were the only ones drinking. So he invited me to have a chat with him, and the first round was on him. Me being myself, how could I say no to free whiskey? Tyler grinned. Anyways, he said his name was Michael. We started talking about work and stuff. Then his wife started to call him. He kept ignoring her calls, and I asked him why. He said to me he couldn't go back there yet. He said his home no longer felt like home, not with the way he and his wife had been fighting. That's when I noticed the bruises and cuts on his knuckles. He tried to hide them when he realized I was looking, but it was already too late. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but somehow I found the courage to confront him about it. Tyler scratched the back of his head. His body language had changed. He no longer looked as relaxed as he did before. I watched him carefully as he stared back at me. He told me he never laid a hand on his wife. He needed to get out of the house, and when he walked his truck, he heard a man singing in the woods. Michael said he wasn't much of a spook, but he and his wife lived miles away from anyone else. So to hear another man singing in the woods near his house, well, that would unsettle just about anyone. Tyler stared down at my hands in deep thought until I spoke. "So what did he do?" I asked. Michael said he fell onto the ice, and then as fast as he could, he got into his truck and left his wife at the house. Next thing you know, here he is at the bar drinking whiskey like it's water and ignoring her 10th missed call. I found out a few days later he and his wife had disappeared. The police found footprints leading into the woods, but it was winter and they were never seen again. Tyler then turned closer to me. "The reason I'm telling you this is because you have the same look on your face that he had that night. At the time I thought he was crazy, that maybe he was lying about not hurting his wife. But I'll never forget the look on that man's face. He believed what he was saying, and I see it in you now." He gently lifted my left hand and kissed the top of my bruised hand. "I see your hand for cuts and bruises. I see the fear in your eyes, Katie. The same look he did. And I didn't believe him at first. I want you to know I believe you. That's why I want you to come home with me." His arms wrapped around me. His warm breath felt nice against my cold neck. "Let's go back to my place for the night. Get you away from whatever the hell this is, okay?" I closed my eyes and wrapped my arms around him and kissed his right cheek. "Thank you," I said with a smile and relief. Something strange happened the morning after my mother died. Back in 2016, my mom was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer, where only a year later, the doctors would then find 3 lesions in her brain. 2 years after her first diagnosis, my mom would sadly pass away. By this time, in the summer of 2018, we had been living in the Irish countryside for only a few months. My dad told me the news of my mom's passing on a very sunny morning. And to process this, I went to sit in the back garden, almost numb with denial. I then noticed something strange about my shadow. For some reason, the silhouette of my face looked exactly like that of my mom. I don't really look that much like my mom, as I more resemble my dad, but the face I saw in that shadow indeed appeared to be that of my mom. However, this was by no means the strangest thing to happen that morning. Only a little time later, still sat outside in the back garden, my dog then starts reacting to something coming from the open back door. When I go over to investigate, I realize what my dog is reacting to is a noise coming from the empty trash can directly behind the door. My dog seemed frightened of whatever this was, and so I walk cautiously over to the trash can to peer inside. What I see at the very bottom of the empty trash can is a tiny shrew, seemingly stuck and trying hopelessly to find its way out. If you're wondering why finding a shrew in a trash can is so strange, then let me explain. My dad used to tell my mom that she had a cute nose like a shrew because of how pointy her nose was. So finding this shrew the day after my mom passed away was more than a little ironic. However, what was also strange about this was there was no way this tiny shrew could have climbed inside the trash can. The can was too tall and was completely empty, no trash or anything. So how this shrew got in there and was unable to get out again was rather odd. Calling my dad from the next room, he then comes to the kitchen and sees the shrew. My dad's always been good with animals, and so he scoops the shrew carefully into his hands, brings it to the garden, and releases it back into the wild. To sum up what I'm trying to get at here, on the morning after my mom's passing, I see my mother's face in my own shadow, and then I find a shrew, my dad's pet name for her, that impossibly got itself stuck inside a trash can. Although we did live in the countryside, and so there were wild animals everywhere, this is the only shrew I have seen to date. This experience was very weird to me at the time, and now, thinking back on it, it still is. I know grief does strange things to the brain, but my dad, who considers himself an atheist, also found the shrew thing very strange. I don't really know all that much regarding the supernatural connection to death, and so if anyone has any insight into this experience of mine, I would really appreciate the advice. I don't believe my mom was reincarnated as a shrew or anything. In regard to her face in my shadow, I'm aware the mind can play tricks on you. But because I've heard other strange stories of people after losing loved ones, I'm more inclined to believe all this wasn't just a coincidence. Someone tried my door handle every night at 2:17 a.m. I never used to be paranoid about locking my door. I live alone in a small rented portion at the end of a quiet street where nothing unusual ever really happens. It's the kind of place where neighbors know each other, and nights are usually silent. That's why the first time I heard the sound, I convinced myself it was nothing. I woke up randomly in the middle of the night to a soft metallic click. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, but then I heard it again, a slow, careful rattle. It was my front door handle being pressed down. I grabbed my phone. 2:17 a.m. I froze in bed, staring into the darkness, listening as the handle moved once more, gently, like someone was testing it without wanting to make noise. After a few seconds, it stopped. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. The next morning, I told myself it was probably the wind or the metal shifting because of the temperature, even though deep down I knew exactly what it sounded like. The second night, I was awake when it happened. I remember checking the time at 2:16 a.m. before putting my phone down. Exactly 1 minute later, I heard it again. Click, rattle, slower this time, more deliberate. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Whoever was outside wasn't aggressively trying to break in. They were calmly testing the handle, like they were hoping tonight might be the night I forgot to lock it. I didn't move. I didn't turn on any lights. I just lay there, completely still, until it stopped. By the third night, I knew it wasn't random. I turned off all the lights and sat quietly in the living room, staring at the door. When 2:17 a.m. came, the handle slowly pressed down right in front of my eyes. The door shifted slightly in its frame, but the lock held. My entire body went cold. I forced myself to look to the peephole, and that's when I realized something even worse. Whoever it was wasn't standing directly in front of the door. They were positioned slightly to the side, out of view, like they knew how peepholes worked. I installed a small motion camera. The next day, on the fourth night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with notification. Motion detected. My hands were shaking as I opened the app. A man in a dark hoodie stood beside my door. His face wasn't fully visible, but I could clearly see his mouth. He was smiling, not nervously, not angrily, calmly, like this was routine for him. He gently tried the handle twice, then leaned closer to the door for a moment before stepping back and walking out of frame. The police took it seriously after seeing the footage and increased patrols in the area. After that, it stopped. No more rattling. No more 2:17 a.m. visits. Months have passed now, and technically I'm safe. But I still wake up almost every night around the same time, instinctively checking the clock as it turns from 2:16 to 2:17. The door hasn't moved again, yet I can't shake the feeling that he wasn't in a hurry to get inside. It felt like he was patient, like he was waiting for one small mistake. And sometimes, when I step outside in the evening, I catch myself scanning the street, half expecting to see a man in a hoodie standing at the corner, not looking at the houses, just looking at mine. I took a shortcut through the bush at 16. I think something followed me. I've been seeing a lot of scary Reddit stories shared on TikTok and Instagram lately, and it finally made me feel brave enough to share something that happened to me when I was 16, living in my hometown in Australia. When I was 16, I got into my first somewhat serious relationship. He was my close friend's older brother, and their house was about a 10-minute walk from mine. If you were willing to cut through a stretch of bushland along a barely noticeable dirt road, my house sat directly across the street from the entrance to that bush track. One night, I was at my boyfriend's place watching a movie, and we both fell asleep. When we woke up, it was almost 11 p.m. His mom had a strict no sleepovers rule, especially for partners. He walked me to the door, said goodbye, and that was it. Looking back now, I really think he should have offered to walk me home. I was only 16 and it was late. I started down the street, toward the bushland entrance. Going the long way around through the streets would have taken over 20 minutes, while the bush track only took about 10. I'd used this shortcut plenty of times before, but usually during the day and rarely alone. It was a moonlit night, and I remember thinking the moon was unusually bright. Honestly, one of the most beautiful I'd ever seen. The light filtered through the trees, so the bush wasn't in total darkness, which made me feel a bit better about not tripping. A steady breeze moved through the leaves. It was late September, and that kind of cool, windy night is pretty typical for an Australian spring. I was just over halfway down the dirt road when I noticed something strange. The breeze was still blowing. I could see the trees moving, but everything had gone completely silent. No insects, no rustling, no distant traffic, nothing. It was a kind of silence where you could hear a pin drop. I felt uneasy, but I kept walking. A few moments later, a heavy sinking feeling hit my gut so hard that I stopped dead in my tracks. I just stood there, staring straight ahead, when a sharp chill ran up my spine. It's hard to explain, but my body was screaming at me to run, while my brain was telling me to turn around. To this day, I wish I had just run, but my curiosity got the better of me. Slowly, with my breathing getting heavier, I turned my head. Standing meters behind me on the path was a tall, thin, dark figure. It didn't look like a normal shadow. It had shape, presence, and the only thing I could make out clearly were his eyes, glowing and locked directly onto me. My body instantly went into full fight or flight mode. I turned and sprinted down the dirt road toward my house. I wasn't thinking about anything except getting back to my street. Somewhere visible, somewhere safer, somewhere human. I don't even remember my feet hitting the ground. It felt like I flew. I jumped my back fence, rushed to my bedroom window, slid it open, and climbed inside. That was the first time I stopped running. I turned to look behind me. There was nothing in the yard, nothing on the street, but I could still feel it. That horrible sensation of being watched, like when someone's stare lingers a little too long. I'd barely slept that night. I only drifted off when the skies started to lighten. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The bedroom I was in had originally been my older sister's. She'd moved in front of the house for more space, and I took her old room. The window in that room never properly closed. I later found out it was because she used to sneak out at night and had damaged the latch so it could be opened from the outside. That's how I got in so quickly that night. A few nights later, I was asleep when I suddenly felt the energy in the room change. I jolted awake instantly, like my body sensed something before my brain did. My window was slightly open. I knew I had shut it. I was still shaking from the other night, and I had double-checked it before bed. I got up slowly, walked over, and pushed it closed without even looking outside. I didn't want to see anything. I just wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. After that, the nightmare started. I kept dreaming that my window was opening while I slept, and that someone or something was trying to get in. The dreams were so vivid and frequent that I could barely sleep at night. Eventually, I could only get proper rest during the day. After a couple weeks, I was desperate. I came up with an idea. If the window could slide open from the outside, I'd jam it. I found a piece of wood the right size and wedged it along the window track, so it physically couldn't move. I had my brother test it from outside. It wouldn't budge. After that, the window never opened again. But I never walked through that bushland ever again either. Not alone, not with friends, not even in daylight. I didn't want to tempt anything. Over the years, I've only told this story to a handful of people. One of them was my best friend and his partner, who is Aboriginal. When I described the figure I saw, the look on his face genuinely scared me. He told me he believed I might have encountered a Mokoi in some Yamaoka belief from Arnhem land. A Mokoi is a malevolent spirit associated with death, illness, and misfortune. It's said to lurk in dense bushland at night. They're known to be stealthy, fast, and often invisible, which made him say it was unusual that I saw it at all. He also said something that stayed with me ever since, that the darkness connected to a Mokoi can follow a person long after the encounter, if they manage to escape. The way he said it made my stomach drop. I'm 30 now. I live an hour away from my hometown with my partner and our 2 dogs. But every now and then, I still have that nightmare. I'm back in that bedroom. It's dark. The window starts to slide open, and I hear the soft thud of wood hitting the frame as something tries to force its way inside. Even now, sometimes when I'm alone and it's dark, I feel that same shift in the air, that same heavy, watchful presence. I don't know if it's just my brain replaying old fear, or if something from that night in the bush is still trying to find a way in. The man in the rain. This happened when I was 10. It was around 6 p.m. The sun was going down. It had just started raining, not heavy, just enough to make everything feel colder and quieter than usual. I was outside alone, just walking like I normally did. That's when a man called me over. I didn't think anything of it. I was a kid. When adults talked, you listened. That's how I understood the world back then. He told me to come closer. I did. Then he told me to sit on his lap. I hesitated for half a second. But I didn't understand danger the way I do now. So I sat down. For a few seconds, everything felt normal. Then something changed. The way he moved slightly. The way my stomach suddenly felt tight. Even at 10, my body knew before my brain did. Something wasn't right. He told me to stand up. I did. Then he told me to take off my pants. I shook my head saying no. Someone walked past us. They glanced over, then kept walking. That's when I realized no one was coming to help. The sun was almost gone. Then the man started blocking my paths. I didn't want to imagine what if the sun fall. As a 10-year, I was a bit smart. I started counting in my head. 3, 2, 1. I ran as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I was close to my house. I got home safe, but my heart didn't slow down for a long time. I never told anyone back then. I was 10 when I learned that danger doesn't always look dangerous. Now I started to think of it. What if the person walking past wasn't just a stranger?